Chapter 236. Many of these birds were used to scout the situation. Therefore, when these people saw this bird, the first thing they thought of was naturally the Feather Tribe's domesticated birds. Did it tell the Drumming Tribe about our actions? A warrior asked worriedly. They were more afraid of death than the Drumming Tribe. They didn't want to lose their lives before they could get anything. The leader cursed fiercely, venting the anxiety and dissatisfaction in his heart. "Give me the bow." Taking the bow from his subordinate, the leader pulled the bow into a full moon and stared at the white bird resting on the tree as if it was sleeping. His eyes were full of hatred. Whoosh! The bowstring vibrated. The arrow flew at high speed, making a sharp whistling sound due to the friction with the air. The leaves in front of the arrow were pierced and fell from the branches. Tut! The arrow was nailed into a tree branch. The tail of the arrow was still shaking. However, that was not the target he wanted to shoot. He thought the arrow would definitely hit the target, but it hit nothing. The bird that was standing there just now was gone. Where's the bird? The leader suddenly felt a strong sense of danger. There was something wrong with the Drumming Tribe. It was definitely not as simple as they thought. Could it be that the people from the central region were involved? On the surface, the tribes from the central region did not say that they would attack the Drumming Tribe, but who knew if they would do something secretly? Even if it wasn't the big tribes from the central region, if the other tribes from the central region attacked, they would still have to be careful. That bird, maybe it was brought by one of the central tribes? And the roar just now, maybe it was related to the people from the central region? Although he didn't know what happened in the Drumming Tribe, he was now sure that this was not something they could get involved in. Retreat! The leader threw the bow and shouted. But it was too late. A white shadow flashed by. The leader only felt a chill on his scalp. Something flew over his head. He didn't feel any pain. Only the blood that flowed out blocked his vision. Leader! Leader! Seeing their boss fall down with a piece of his head missing, everyone panicked and shouted as they scattered in all directions. Fear pervaded the forest, both inside and outside of the forest. The white bird shook off the blood and flesh on its claws and continued to find a tree to rest. It did not like to move at night and was chased out by Gigu to have a good night's sleep. However, it did not expect to be attacked. It was brought out of the green land by Gigu and was successfully branded by the shaman of the Yanjiao tribe. It would not attack the people of the Yanjiao tribe, but it would not treat the people of other tribes well. Just as he was about to continue resting, a figure suddenly flew across the sky. The white bird looked at the cha-cha flying above it, then retracted its gaze and continued to rest. Within the Drumming Tribe, this invasion was nearing its end. It was shorter than any previous invasion the Drumming Tribe had encountered. All the water moon stones in the water moon passage had been scooped up, and the water gradually became murky. This time, the Drumming Tribe's harvest was huge. They produced more water moonstones than ever before. The adults protected the children and hurried home. Different from the joy of the Drumming Tribe's harvest, the invaders, who were still hiding in the forest and could not sneak in or evacuate, were shrouded in the shadow of death. Ao dragged a man and walked towards the center of the Drumming Tribe. Ha 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 ha! Ji, who was carried by Ao, laughed so hard that his face was distorted, as if he had gone crazy. They had planned to make a lot of money this time, but unexpectedly, none of the people of the Drumming Tribe and the Drumming Tribe could leave safely this time. The Yanjiao tribe was so powerful. Why had they never heard of it? Ji was puzzled. If he had only seen the battle of the Yanjiao tribe once, he would not have refused the decision to send 1,000 more people to the tribe. Unfortunately, this Yanjiao seemed to appear out of nowhere and gave the invaders a painful and unforgettable lesson with extremely fierce means. Ji had lost his ability to move now. He knew clearly what would happen if he was caught. The people of the Drumming Tribe hated him to the core. He controlled the totem power in his body, concentrated it in his heart, and then attacked. Puff! Blood spurted out from Ji's mouth, and he lost his breath. Ao lowered his head and looked at the dead man. His face did not change, and he did not stop walking. He continued to drag the man to the Drumming Tribe. If he gave this man to the Drumming Tribe, he might be able to exchange for more things. As for whether this man was alive or dead, it did not matter. Ao really had no feelings for people outside the tribe. Xiao Xian and the others were busy cleaning up. Suddenly, they heard an eagle cry in the sky, and then something was thrown down. The creature that fell on the ground flapped its wings twice, but its wings were injured, so it could not fly. If the people of the Drumming Tribe and the Drumming Tribe were here, they would definitely recognize that it was the crown kite that Ku had bought from the Feather Tribe at a high price. It was the one that had gone on strike before, but now it was caught by Cha-Cha. At this time, it was no longer arrogant and mighty. It shrank like a quail. What kind of bird is this? It looks delicious. More food tonight. Kiki and the others gathered around. Xiao Xian picked up the kite, looked at it, and said, "Not now?" Hearing that they couldn't eat it, Kiki and the others lost interest and continued to look for the hidden intruders. Xiao Xian knew that Cha-Cha must have something to do with the invaders. He would bring the bird to the people of the drumming tribe to see if they could get any useful information. If it was useless, then it would be an extra meal. The crown kite, which was bought by the people of the central region at a high price, was listed as food by the people of the Yanjiao tribe. When the sun rose the next day, the drumming tribe had already been cleaned up 3 times. Everything that needed to be cleaned had been cleared. "It's over! It's over!" The people of the drumming tribe could not believe it. They were still in a trance. They thought it would be a fierce defensive battle. They wanted to delay until the crocodiles came back. However, it turned out that they had underestimated this Yanjiao tribe. Although there were losses and casualties this time, it was much better than the disastrous situation they had expected. The Yanjiao tribe also suffered casualties this time. They lost 2 warriors and several were seriously injured. However, this situation was just like going out to hunt. It was all part of their plan. They held a funeral for the dead and watched as their bones were swallowed by the fire seed's flame. The tribe would not let the dead warriors be buried in the wilderness. Instead, they would burn them in the fire seed's flame according to the old method. The shaman said that in this way, the souls of the warriors would be integrated into the fire seed and returned to their homeland with everyone. In order to thank the Yanjiao tribe for their help, the chief and shaman of the drumming tribe gave them 10 baskets of water moonstones. These were all gifts from other families, and they were the biggest and brightest. The baskets used to hold the water moonstones were several times bigger than the baskets used by Chun Jia and the others. Ao accepted all of them without hesitation, including many pottery. Although there were already people in the tribe who could make their own pottery after coming here, the people of the Flaming Horns tribe still cherished these things that they didn't have before. After a battle, they had to rest for a few days. The Yanjiao tribe stayed in the drumming tribe for a few more days. During these days, they encountered some trouble. The returning crocodiles were very wary of the few fierce beasts. They often surrounded the fleet in groups. If they were not stopped, they would have gone down to fight. Among them, the snapping turtle was the most special one. Perhaps because it used to live in the same river, it could get along with the crocodiles peacefully. "When everyone calms down, let's leave," Ao said. "Okay, where are we going after this?" the shaman asked. No one spoke. After a while, the shaman called out to Xiao Xian, who was talking to a crocodile below. "Xian." Xiao Xian, who was talking to the black-eyed mute crocodile, raised his head. He knew that the shaman had something to discuss, so he patted the crocodile's rough head. "Go play by yourself. I still have things to do." Then Xiao Xian was about to leave, but the crocodile bit the corner of his trousers. The mute even rolled a few times. Different from the death roll when tearing up food, this time the crocodile rolled more gently. "What's wrong?" Xiao Xian looked at the crocodile shamelessly in the water. After a few more rolls like this, his trousers would be completely ruined. Letting go of Xiao Xian's trousers, the crocodile looked at Xiao Xian and then swam to the deeper part of the river. Xiao Xian got on the boat and discussed the next route with the shaman. After the discussion, when he got off the boat, he was blocked by the mute black crocodile again. This time, it did not bite Xiao Xian's trousers, but opened its mouth to Xiao Xian. "Is it stuck in your teeth?" Xiao Xian was not afraid that the crocodile would bite him directly. Under the nervous gazes of Kiki and the others, he calmly approached the crocodile to have a look. There was no meat, but there was a bowl-sized stone. The muddy gray stone was the same as the stones at the bottom of the rivers in the drumming tribe. It seemed to be a very common stone, nothing special, and its shape was also irregular. "A stone?" Xiao Xian was confused. "It's a gift for you." Fu Shi, who came here under the orders of the chief, smiled. "A gift for me?" Xiao Xian did not understand the customs here. Treasure fish will give gifts to people who help them, and the gifts are the stones they bring back. You know, treasure fish leave every year during the rainy season, and come back when the river rises after the full moon. I heard from the shaman that when they come back, They will also bring back some stones and spit them at the bottom of the Water-Moon Canal. And some of these stones will become Water-Moon stones in the future. If someone in the tribe gets a stone from the treasure fish, they will put it in their own section of the Water-Moon Canal. When the full moon comes, the stone will become a Water-Moon stone. Fu Shi told Xiao Xian everything he knew. Xiao Xian took the stone out of the crocodile's mouth. This stone will become a Water-Moon stone? I heard that as long as it is placed in the Water-Moon Canal, it will become a Water-Moon stone. Fu Shi said. In other words, to become a Water-Moon stone, this stone must be placed in the Water-Moon Canal of the drumming tribe. Moreover, the success rate was not 100%, and there was no definite time. However, Xiao Xian did not insist on turning this stone into a Water-Moon stone. He was still very happy about this special gift. The year you left, it left with the group for the first time. When it came back, you also went back to the tribe. Fu Shi said, so this time it finally saw you again, so it wanted to make up for the gift. Thank you. I will keep it well, Xiao Xian said. Chapter 237. Putting the stone into the animal skin bag, Xiao Xian looked at Fu Shi and asked, what's the matter? Oh yes, there's something. When he saw Bao Yu give the stone to someone, he was so focused on that he almost forgot about the chief's order. Because the crisis of the drumming tribe had been resolved, there wouldn't be any big changes for at least a year. Hearing that the Yanjiao tribe would leave in a few days, the chief Fan Mu planned to invite several important people of the Yanjiao tribe to a banquet. This was the custom of the drumming tribe. For important guests, they would take out the best food to show their gratitude. However, there were too many people in the Yanjiao tribe, so they couldn't invite all of them. Therefore, they only invited the senior leaders of the Yanjiao tribe and the warriors who had played an important role in this incident. As for the others, although they couldn't go with them, they would send some food. Xiao Xian took Fu Shi to see Ao and the shaman. They also agreed to go to the central area of the drumming tribe that night. The reason why the banquet was held at night instead of during the day was that Fan Mu wanted to use the Water-Moon stone to show his respect. In the evening, Ao selected 50 people to go with the shaman. Xiao Xian was among them. Probably in order to take care of the Yanjiao tribe, there were many Water-Moon stones as light sources from the fleet to the place where the banquet would be held, so that the people of the Yanjiao tribe could see the surroundings clearly. At this time, the moonlight was enough, and the light of the Water-Moon stones was not inferior to the moonlight. Walking in the forest, Xiao Xian felt like he had turned on a street lamp. There was an open space in front of Fan Mu's house. There were big fires on the ground. Food was being roasted on the fire, and soup was boiling in a big pot. Water-Moon stones were piled on the wooden pillars around, illuminating the surroundings. It was a very simple banquet, but it was considered grand here. The warriors of the Yanjiao tribe didn't mind such a banquet. When they were in the tribe, they would sit in a circle around the fire, roast food, and chat. Naturally, they wouldn't feel uncomfortable. At this dinner, in addition to expressing his gratitude, Fan Mu also asked the Flaming Horns tribe if they needed to go to the Pu tribe to trade. Every year, shortly after the Water-Moon festival, the drumming tribe would send a trading team to the Pu tribe to trade for something. When the Yanjiao warriors heard that they could go to other tribes to see the trade, their eyes lit up as they looked at Ao, hoping that Ao would agree. Ao was silent for a few seconds as he chewed on the meat. Then he said, "There's no need for all of them to go. Just 10 of them will do." As he spoke, Ao picked 10 people on the spot, including Xiao Xian. After all, Xiao Xian was familiar with the situation there. Ao felt more assured with him around. "Chief me too." Kiki, who was not named, hurriedly reminded him. Ao glanced at him and said nothing. He always felt that this guy was unreliable. Kiki did make a lot of contributions in this defense battle. The number of prey, he reported, was in the top 5. The people of the Yanjiao tribe wouldn't lie about the number of their prey. They didn't dare to. In his mind, when facing the chief, shaman, and team leaders, there was no such thing as lying or false, unless one didn't know how to count. Generally speaking, the number of prey reported was true and trustworthy. Kiki had made such a great contribution to himself, but he was not allowed to trade with them. He felt a little sad. When the banquet ended and the people of the Yanjiao tribe returned, Kiki was still pestering Ao, trying to persuade him to agree. Before leaving, Xiao Xian was one step behind Ao and the others. He asked Qing Yi, the leader of the trading team of the drumming tribe, about the current situation of the Pu tribe. When Xiao Xian finished his inquiry and left, Ao and the others had already returned to their resting places and were ready to sleep. Xiao Xian walked alone in the forest. The water moonstones around him hadn't been put away yet. They were lined up on one side like street lamps, and the shadows of the branches swayed on the ground. Looking up, Xiao Xian looked at the night sky. 2 moons had begun to fade, hanging in the dark sky. There were no stars around. There were no electric lights, no pollution, no mechanical tools, and no comfortable hotels. What he breathed in was a slightly moist air with the smell of the forest. What he could see was endless nature. The night wind blew, and the leaves on the trees around him rustled. Xiao Xian could clearly feel the changes in the airflow when the wind hit the trees. Closing his eyes without sight, Xiao Xian's other senses became more sensitive. He could hear the friction between the leaves, the laughter of the drumming tribe people in the distance, and the sound of crocodiles swimming in the pool. The changes in the wind speed, the direction of the airflow, and his sensitive senses allowed Xiao Xian to distinguish the trees around him, and where there were obstacles. He didn't need to see to know where the way out was. He lifted his foot, 1 step, 2 steps. He avoided the tree trunks, bypassed the bushes, and stepped over the protruding soil on the ground. Xiao Xian walked faster and faster, smoother and smoother. Everything around him had already formed a 3-dimensional picture in his mind. From this picture, he could accurately determine where the obstacles were. He even had a feeling that if he wanted, as long as he had enough time, he could even count how many branches were as thick as an arm on the 10-meter-tall tree next to him. He could even count the number of leaves on each branch. He could do it. This feeling was getting clearer and clearer. Maintaining this state, Xiao Xian slowly blended into the natural forest. In this unfamiliar forest, he closed his eyes and walked freely. As he walked, Xiao Xian noticed that on the 3-dimensional picture formed in his mind, there were light spots. Most of them were slightly further away from him. Those moving light spots were faintly white, similar to the water moonstones. Were those people from the drumming tribe? Feeling carefully, Xiao Xian could vaguely feel some familiarity. Fu Shi, Qingyi, Fanmu, and some others. Some of them were at the place where the banquet was held, and some were patrolling in the forest. There was only one exception. In front of him, there was a moving light spot coming this way. This light spot was not like the white of the drumming tribe, but an inconspicuous gray. If one was not careful, it would be easy to miss this light spot. Not from the drumming tribe? Very strange. Naturally, it was not from the Yanjiao tribe. Then who was it? Xiao Xian opened his eyes and looked forward. There was almost no sound of footsteps, but the other party was approaching. Xiao Xian stood in the same place, holding the hilt of his knife, quietly looking over there. Probably because he had discovered Xiao Xian, the other party no longer hid his movements. His footsteps gradually became louder, but he also controlled the sound and rhythm, just like the speed and sound of the patrolling members of the drumming tribe. A strong figure came out. Looking at the figure, it was similar to many of the warriors of the drumming tribe, and also dressed like them. "Are you from the Yanjiao tribe?" The other party's rough voice was casual and familiar, just like the other members of the drumming tribe treated the Yanjiao tribesmen. As the other party slowly approached, Xiao Xian also saw his face clearly. It was a very standard appearance of the drumming tribe. "Are you from the patrol team? What's your name?" Xiao Xian asked. The other party smiled, seeming a little embarrassed to speak. "I'm just lazy, so I came out for a walk," the other party said, but his words slowly slowed down. Finally, he stopped before he finished his sentence. "So sharp." The other party looked at the knife in Xiao Xian's hand, and then looked at Xiao Xian's defensive posture without any suspicion. He also understood that he had been recognized, so he no longer wasted time making up excuses. Even the tone of his voice changed. "Actually, I'm just here to watch the fun," he said. It was impossible to tell his age or gender from his voice. Crack, 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 crack. With the soft sound of bones cracking, Xiao Xian noticed that the other party's figure was changing. He had gone from being tall and strong to being thin, as if he had been deflated. His face was also changing, no longer looking like a member of the drumming tribe. Bang! There was a muffled sound like a wooden stake falling to the ground. The other party suddenly stomped on the ground. His legs, which had become as thin as firewood, seemed to have the strength of steel. The shockwaves caused by the powerful force shot out from where his feet touched. The weeds on the ground were violently torn apart, breaking into tiny pieces. The slightly dry and hard pieces of soil between the weeds were instantly pulverized into dust. The other party stomped on the ground and rushed straight at Xiao Xian. His entire leg was like a Cold War knife, drawing an arc in the air, bringing with it a strong force that cut through the air towards Xiao Xian. Xiao Xian did not intend to take this kick head-on. Instead, he chose to retreat and avoid it. After missing the kick, the other party did not stop. Like a poisonous snake, he stomped on the ground and bounced up again, as if he was going to attack again. However, to Xiao Xian's surprise, after this stomp, the other party's figure disappeared from where he was. He did not hide, he really ran away. Xiao Xian was speechless. From the moment the other party was exposed, he had only taken 2 steps. In the first step, he kicked towards Xiao Xian. His momentum was as fierce as the claws of a beast, the fangs of a poisonous snake, as if he wanted to fight to the death with Xiao Xian. However, in the second step, he suddenly changed his style and ran away like a bolt of lightning. Xiao Xian did not chase after him. The other party's actions were strange, and he ran away quickly. It would not be easy for him to catch him. Moreover, the other party was not weak. Furthermore, that person gave Xiao Xian a feeling that he did not have any murderous intent. Even when he kicked out, it was just power, but there was no real murderous intent. He just opened his mouth and revealed his sharp teeth and claws, scaring people into retreating immediately. Xiao Xian looked in the direction of the other party's disappearance, wondering who he was. When he was in the drumming tribe, he also met people who were good at disguising and hiding, but they were not from the drumming tribe. Was this the robber that the people of the drumming tribe once talked about? His purpose was to steal the water moonstones? But it should not be. There were so many along the way, and none of them were missing. So, as he said, he was just here to watch the fun? Encountering a suspicious person, Xiao Xian naturally would not hide it. He took out the wooden whistle and blew it. The patrolling members of the drumming tribe, who were closest to him, came over. On the Fanmu tribe's side, people who had not left heard the whistle and also came over to Xiao Xian. They did not understand the whistle of the Yanjiao tribe, but they knew that if it was a small matter, Xiao Xian would not blow the whistle. Not only the people of the drumming tribe, but also the people of the Yanjiao tribe who had just returned to their temporary residence, immediately got up. However, they did not go to Xiao Xian, but vigilantly looked around. They knew what Xiao Xian meant from the whistle. They just needed to be vigilant. There was no need to go over. Chapter 238. Xiao Xian told the drumming tribe about his encounter with the strange man. After the people of the drumming tribe carefully inspected their territory, they hurriedly counted their own water moon stones to see if they had lost any. This had happened many times in the past. They thought that the strange man must be a robber. But after checking, they didn't find any missing water moonstones, so they were relieved. Every year, some water moonstones were stolen, but they couldn't catch the culprit. They could only guess, but other than the robbers, they couldn't think of anyone else. The robbers were a very special tribe. The members of the tribe were relatively independent and didn't live together all year round. This tribe was very mysterious. The drumming tribe had limited information, so Xiao Xian couldn't get more information from them. It wasn't stolen. This time it shouldn't be a robber, right? Fu Shi's wife Ping said. I'm not sure. No one knows who he is. We can't find him. Fu Shi sighed. After the discussion, they found that no one's water moonstones were stolen this year, so they went back. Xiao Xian didn't stay too long either. After the drumming tribe people left, he also left. He found that the shaman of the drumming tribe didn't look too good, but since he didn't say anything, Xiao Xian couldn't force him to tell. He just guessed that if it was really a robber, they must have stolen something. This time, no one else's water moonstones were stolen. Could it be that the shaman's water moonstones were stolen? Xiao Xian didn't know, but he guessed right. After the drumming tribe people left, the shaman of the drumming tribe called the chief over for a private conversation. This year's water moonstone was stolen. The shaman of the drumming tribe said with a cold face as he looked at the empty box. Every year, after the water moonstones were harvested, they would pick out the biggest one and give it to the shaman to judge. Then they would choose the biggest and brightest one with the best quality. It was also called the Water Moon King Stone by the people of the drumming tribe. This stone would not be taken out for trade. Instead, it was kept by the shaman as one of the offerings during the ceremony. But now the king stone was lost. The shaman's house was heavily guarded. Even the drumming tribe and the drumming tribe couldn't sneak in and steal the king's stone. Sure enough, it's a robber. However, the robber who came this time is ranked higher, Fan Mu said helplessly. If Xiao Xian hadn't told them about the abnormality today, perhaps they wouldn't have realized that the Water Moon King's stone was missing until the ceremony. Choose another one in secret, the shaman said. In the past, the stolen Water Moon stones could not be recovered. Now that there was a higher grade one, it was even more difficult. Perhaps the other party had already left the drumming tribe. That's the only way. At the same time, a figure escaped the search of the drumming tribe and left the area. After leaving the territory of the drumming tribe, they ran for a while before sitting down on a stone at the foot of the mountain. What? Have we been discovered? A surprised voice came from behind him. Judging from the voice, it was a woman, but her age couldn't be determined. The man sitting on the stone didn't turn his head and continued to beat his legs. Don't mention it. I met a strange guy from the Yanjiao tribe. He recognized me at a glance and almost attacked me. Fortunately, I ran fast enough. If we really fought, I would have been delayed by him. When the Yanjiao tribe arrived, I wouldn't have been able to get away. The Yanjiao tribe again? I've never heard of them before. They suddenly appeared, and their strength is not weak. Although they can't be compared with the big tribes in the central region, they can't be underestimated. What's more, they have several ferocious beasts, the woman said in surprise. After a pause, she asked, "Did you get it?" The man sitting on the stone took out a leather bag from his animal skin coat and took out a shining stone. It was like a high-wattage light bulb, illuminating the surroundings instantly. This was the Water Moon King stone stolen from the drumming tribe. I originally wanted to go to the Yanjiao tribe's ship to have a look. Maybe there are many good things. What a pity. The man sitting on the stone said regretfully as he beat his legs. This Yanjiao tribe is interesting. Should we follow them? The woman said with interest. That's fine, but we have to stay away. The previous method didn't work. I have a feeling that it might work in other tribes, but not in this tribe. As far as I know, a few idiots have already started to act according to the old method. The woman's voice had a hint of ridicule. Oh, then let's wait and see how they die. At least they can make room for the people behind them, the man sitting on the stone said lightly. The Yanjiao tribesmen didn't know that they were being watched. Even if they knew, they wouldn't be afraid. In the next 2 days, Xiao Xian took 10 people from the Yanjiao tribe and went to the Pu tribe with the trading team of the drumming tribe. They exchanged a lot of things with Zhao. Even if they didn't need them, others in the tribe might need them. After coaxing and pestering, Ao finally agreed. Kiki also followed them to the Pu tribe. For him, things that were rare in other people's eyes were not at all attractive to him, except for those fat frogs that jumped everywhere. If he hadn't promised Ao that he would listen to Xiao Xian's words and not touch the frogs of the Pu tribe, he might have secretly taken away some of the fat frogs of the Pu tribe and eaten them. Now, the surrounding tribes all knew that in order to deal with the crisis, the drumming tribe had found help from a tribe called Yanjiao. It wasn't a famous tribe. However, this time, the people sent by the drumming tribe and the drumming tribe were almost completely wiped out. Even a bird didn't come back. Therefore, when they saw the Yanjiao tribesmen who came with the drumming tribe, everyone was curious. However, the Yanjiao tribesmen didn't feel that they were being watched at all. They just did what they should do and asked questions whenever they had doubts. Gradually, they became familiar with this kind of trading. The chief said that they would also need this kind of trading in the future, so they had to master it. In addition to the frog poison and other things from Xiao Xian also exchanged some fishing nets from the Luo tribe, who arrived at the Pu tribe on the same day as them. When they sailed, they could catch some fish. Here, unlike in the hunting forest, they could get whatever they wanted on the spot. In a place dominated by human tribes, they had to exchange a lot of resources and store them in their hands. They could use them whenever they needed, which saved more time. After returning from the Pu tribe, the Yanjiao tribe was ready to set off again. When they left, many people of the drumming tribe came to see them off, led by Fan Mu and the shaman of the drumming tribe. In addition to people, there were also groups of crocodiles. Those crocodiles probably came together to cheer. After all, the ferocious beasts that troubled them had finally left. There are some smaller groups of tribes ahead. They may shoot arrows to harass us. Be careful. Xiao Xian said. The warriors of the Yanjiao tribe standing outside the cabin were all holding wooden and stone shields to defend against the arrows. However, when the boat sailed past, they didn't see any arrows. Xiao Xian thought about the reason and suddenly felt like laughing. He remembered a joke from a friend in his previous life. You used to drive a shabby car and you dared to crash. Now that you have a luxury car, you don't dare to crash? When Xiao Xian was on a raft, he was constantly harassed by arrows. Now he was on a boat, but he didn't see any arrows. The people hiding behind the trees on both sides of the river didn't take any action. They weren't stupid. They knew who they could mess with and who they couldn't touch. In the early morning, the surrounding air was a little humid. There were mountains of different heights and forests on both sides of the river. However, compared with the hunting ground, it was much inferior. In the past, when they were still on the other side of the river, they could climb thousands of feet high cliffs and climb over high mountains in the hunting ground. That was a kind of conquest. But here, the mountains were not as high as in the hunting ground, and the beasts here were not as strong as in the hunting ground. However, there were people here, other tribes, and more challengers. Here, the threat of people was far greater than that of the high mountains and fierce beasts. Ao's purpose was achieved. After the incident in the drumming tribe, the people of the Yanjiao tribe had a preliminary understanding of life here, and their mentality had changed. A new challenge, a new life, they had to adapt to conquer. Xiao Xian stood at the bow of the boat and told Ao and the two team leaders about the news he had heard from the Pu tribe. In the past 2 years, which tribes had disappeared, and which tribes had no sense of existence before. By the way, Yan Shua asked me if I could bring some of his acquaintances here. Xian, what do you think? Ao asked. Bring them, not only here, but also the wanderer friends of Yan Ji and the others in the Longboat tribe. We can pick them up when the time comes. Although they don't have strong fighting power, they can help us in other ways. Ao nodded. In this case, you go with Yan Shua and the others to bring them here. Okay. And Chief, our tribe is back. The wanderers in Yanjiao may feel it. Xiao Xian said. Speaking of the wanderers in the tribe like Yan Ji and the others, Ao was refreshed, indeed. Even if they hadn't reached the old land and lit the fire there, maybe they could meet many wanderers of the Yanjiao tribe. Chapter 239. Originally, Xiao Xian planned to go with Yan Shua to bring the wanderers who were with Yan Shua. In the original plan, they didn't go through there. There were too many forks in the river, so the tribe's fleet would go through another waterway. But before they left, the shaman stopped the people who were about to leave. The shaman wanted the fleet to go to the place where Yan Shua used to live. Xiao Xian told him that there were many wanderers and slaves who lived a hard life there. Let them go and have a look. This was what the shaman said at that time. He wanted the Yanjiao tribesmen who had been isolated outside to see the wanderers who lived in the cracks. They wanted to see the two lives of others after the tribe was destroyed, wanderers and slaves. The shaman wanted to teach the Yanjiao tribesmen a lesson. Since they crossed the river, the shaman's presence was much lower. When they were in the tribe, many things were decided after the discussion between the chief and the shaman. But after they came here, the shaman rarely intervened. Most of the time, it was Ao who commanded in the front. Now the shaman rarely expressed his opinion, so naturally no one objected. The fleet took a long detour. From the original plan, they came to the waterway that the traveling team of the Pu tribe often traveled. On the land next to the Y-shaped river fork, the slaves were called to work early in the morning. There were many large and small bamboo rafts on the river. These were the slaves who were fishing. When they were there, the wanderers didn't dare to fight with them, because they would be besieged. Some supervisors with whips on the shore stared at the river to prevent anyone from being lazy, and also to guard against the wanderers. These supervisors were only a little better than the slaves at the lowest level. They weren't at the level of titled slaves, but at least they had some more power from the slave owners. They were stronger than those who hadn't awakened their totem power. Staying here was also a deterrent to the wanderers who were ready to make trouble. Those who could climb from the lowest level to the supervisor level were all ruthless people. It could be seen from their eyes that they were ruthless. A little further away from the slaves, some wanderers also began to work. A few wanderers who were dressed better than the others yawned and walked slowly to the river. They drank some water and washed their faces with the river to wake up. Looking at the slaves who had already started working, the leader spat in that direction. Boss, recently some of the travelers have started to move again, right? Someone asked. If there are more travelers, we can also get some work from the slaves, another person said. The leader stood up and wiped his face. Keep a close eye on it. Don't let anyone steal it, Now, in the Wanderers area, the only people who could fight against them were the people that Yen Shuo had brought with him. The two sides had not directly killed each other, but they were both on guard against each other. Didn't you hear that they would leave in the future? Go to Yen Shuo's tribe. Someone said. Leave? Chi. A bearded man next to him sneered, mocking those words. They can only talk about it here. How long can they live if they really leave this place? Perhaps, in less than 2 days, they will be eaten by wild beasts or killed by people from other tribes. Not bad. The leader nodded in agreement. Let's not talk about whether they have the ability to leave. Even if they can leave, who knows what Yen Shuo's tribe is like? The Wanderers live under the control of the tribe. It's even more difficult. The people of the tribe will kill whoever they don't like, especially those small tribes that lack food. They may even treat the Wanderers as food. It's not like we haven't seen it before. If you want to go to the big tribes, those in the central region. What do the big tribes in the central region look like? A younger man asked. The leader suddenly felt proud. He raised his chin and signaled the people next to him to make way. He went over and sat on a high stone. Then he talked about some of the scenes that he had seen when he was drifting outside. In fact, there were many scenes that he couldn't remember. It was too vague. But it didn't matter. He just needed to scare these people. Especially the longboat tribe. They are the real strong people on the water. Their boats are much higher than our houses. They are not like the simple rafts that the slaves use. They are just some simple rafts, and they even leak. The traveling tribes around are not so good either. As he was talking, the leader suddenly realized that after talking for so long, the others didn't react at all. Not only that, but they were also looking at other places. Were they looking at the slaves who were fishing with nets on the water? What are you looking at? The leader said discontentedly. No, boss. There are boats over there. A man pointed tremblingly. How many times have I said that the boats that the slaves use can't be considered boats? The leader was even more discontented. Really, boss? Then it's the same as the boats you said. They are taller than our houses. Another man also said. Yes, yes. The others nodded vigorously. Bigger than our houses? The man sitting cross-legged on the stone on the shore turned to look at the direction that the others pointed. He was so shocked that he almost sprained his waist. On the river in the distance, boats were coming over. Each boat was taller than the houses they lived in. Especially the 3 largest boats. It reminded the leader of the vague memory that he had once encountered the Longboat tribe's fleet. Longboat tribe? The leader exclaimed. No, that's not right. The Longboat tribe doesn't have that kind of totem. It's more like... A thin man next to the leader pulled his long beard that he hadn't shaved for a long time. The pattern on the boats looks familiar. I think I've seen it somewhere before. I think I've seen it before too. Someone agreed. In the Wanderers area. Wanderers area? Impossible. Oh. Look, they're coming. Will they stop here? If they stop, we'll definitely get something, right? Looking at such a situation, they knew that they were not to be trifled with. They didn't have any thoughts of killing and robbing anymore. They just stared at the fleet that was getting closer and closer. On the river, the slaves were already shouting and moving their rafts to the riverbank. If they stayed on the river, they would be blocking the way. They didn't even dare to offend the travelers on rafts, let alone such a fleet. They didn't even need the supervisor to whip them. They were all afraid that they would fall behind and get into trouble. The appearance of a fleet was naturally a big matter. It had to be reported. The supervisor had already shouted and told the higher-ups about what happened on the river. The slave master wasn't here, but he also left the supervisor here to enslave them. Many people who were still in the Wanderers area and didn't go out also approached the riverbank to see the fleet that suddenly appeared. Many of them had lived until now and had never been out of here. They also hadn't seen such a big ship. Naturally, they felt that it was very strange. The fleet gradually approached the riverbank. The waves washed the sand on the riverbank. The slaves were already waiting there. The supervisor who held the whip had already changed his face. He put away all his ruthlessness and had a fawning expression on his face. If they did a good job, they would be rewarded. After the ship reached the riverbank, they didn't put down the ladder. A few warriors jumped down from the ship one after another. The one leading was Yen Shuo. Looking at this familiar yet strange place, Yen Shuo's heart was filled with emotions. A supervisor hung the whip on his back and trotted forward. He wanted to say something, but after seeing Yen Shuo's appearance, all his words were stuck in his throat. He knew Yen Shuo. When Yen Shuo's family left with the others, He was standing by the riverbank. Yan Shuo glanced around. His gaze stopped for a moment on the few wanderers who were as stiff as stone statues not far away. Then he looked in the direction of the wanderers' area. "This is the place where you used to live?" The warrior who jumped down asked Yan Shuo. "Yes, this is the place. It has changed a lot." While talking, Yan Shuo took them to find his friends who had stayed here before. Xiao Xian did not disembark. He stood on the ship and looked at the stone houses that were nearly 10 meters tall in the distance. When he left, there were no such houses. It was obvious that the slaves built these houses in the past 2 years. They belonged to the slave owners. If it was just for the wanderers to live, it would only need some simple wooden houses. The place for the slaves to live was even worse. It wasn't like the buildings behind the forest that looked like a camp. The slave master seems to have a big plan, Xiao Xian said in his heart. Originally, he only came to pick up a few people. He didn't expect to see the large stone houses that were built like a camp. If he didn't stand on the ship and just stood on the ground, it was very likely that his sight would be blocked by the forest. Not long after, Yanji brought back more than 10 people. Some of them were familiar with him, and some were new members of the small group in these 2 years. They all wanted to leave with the Yanjiao tribe, and Ao agreed. The people who were taken on the ship cried with joy, as if they were reborn. The other wanderers who were standing on the river bank and watching had endless envy and jealousy in their eyes. Who would have thought that the person who was so miserable in the past would have such an opportunity? Who would have thought that the person who was stubborn and lived a hard life with his wife and children would become a totem warrior? Life was unpredictable. The fleet of the Yanjiao tribe didn't stay here for a long time. They left after picking up the people. The shaman just let the people of the tribe see the miserable situation of the wanderers and slaves here, to give them a warning. The shaman's purpose was achieved. No matter the people who followed Yanji to the wanderers' area, or the people who stood on the ship and watched the slaves who were numbly working with whips, they all had a great psychological impact. In the war, if they were defeated, except for death, they would probably be in such a situation. Therefore, no matter who they faced in the future, they couldn't be defeated. They absolutely couldn't be defeated. The fleet of the Yanjiao tribe came and left, and continued to sail along the new route they had planned. The wanderers and slaves on this land had already remembered the name of the Yanjiao tribe and the two-horned totem pattern wrapped in flames on the sails. The steward, who was left behind by the slave master Shirshu, went back after the fleet left. He took out the animal skin roll left by the slave master from the box, dipped the animal hairbrush in paint, and wrote down what happened today. The master had said that if the Yanjiao tribe really appeared, he should write a letter to inform him. The Yanjiao tribe really existed. Chapter 240. In addition to the people Yan Shuo knew, on the way, the tribe also met some wanderers who were looking for the fire seed. Xiao Xian had never seen them before, but since they could feel the fire seed and follow the fire seed, they must be the descendants of the Yanjiao tribe. Many of them had faint totem runes on their bodies when they came over, just like Yan Shuo. Some of these people were weak, skinny, malnourished, injured, and so on. They didn't seem to be in a good condition, but according to them, they were much better than before. 2 years ago, faint totem patterns suddenly appeared on their bodies, and their strength also increased a lot. Today, the totem patterns appeared again, and they felt something strange again, so they hurried to come here. Ao cleared 2 boats, one for the wanderers of the Yanjiao tribe, and the other for the wanderers whose tribe was destroyed. Of course, Ao would also send people to watch each boat. Ao was now vigilant, no matter if they were wanderers from other tribes or from his own tribe. He knew that Yanji and the others had met some traitors, and that many people here were not as loyal as the original tribe members, so he needed to wait and see. After waiting and seeing, he was happy to accept those who were trustworthy and welcome them back, but those who were not determined were another matter. In the cabin of the central boat. "How many people are there?" the shaman asked Xiao Xian. 27 wanderers from other tribes and 49 wanderers from our tribe, almost 50. Xiao Xian said. Among the wanderers from other tribes, there were he heir and the others who had stayed in the longboat tribe. The fleet of the Yanjiao tribe didn't pass by the longboat tribe. Ao didn't want to directly contact the longboat tribe, so now the fleet took another route. After all, only a few people can feel the fire seed. The shaman sighed. They can only feel it in a limited range, and they can only feel it in the vicinity of the sailing route. Now the fire seed hasn't really burned in the old haunt. When it really burns, more people will be able to feel it. Xiao Xian said, "Well, Xian, you keep an eye there. I feel something strange there." Compared with other people, including the two team leaders, the shaman actually believed in Xiao Xian's ability more. "I feel it too. All right, you rest first. I'll go take a look and find out who's trying to take advantage of the situation." Xiao Xian put down the map in his hand and asked Gui Zhe to give him 2 packets of medicine before he left the cabin. Xiao Xian took the medicine to the wanderers of the tribe and asked Mai to boil a pot of medicine for them. Then he took another bag of medicine to the boat where the wanderers were. Although the wanderers whose tribes had been destroyed decided to follow them, they were still afraid of the strange totem warriors. When they saw that Xiao Xian did not have a knife in his hand, they relaxed a little. The warriors who had come in before were all holding stone tools. Coupled with their imposing manner, it would be strange if the wanderers were not afraid. It was rare to see someone who looked easy to talk to. Several of them knew Xiao Xian. When they saw Xiao Xian, they were not so afraid. They even smiled and greeted him, but they were careful in their words, for fear of offending Xiao Xian by saying something wrong. "Have Yanji and Yanshua been here?" Xiao Xian looked at the people in the cabin and asked. "Yes, they have just left." He who had been brought here by Yanji and Jiao Wu from the Longboat tribe 2 days ago, answered hurriedly. Xiao Xian handed him the medicine. "Boil this medicine for everyone. It will help your wounds heal faster." There was a simple stove outside. He thanked Xiao Xian and went out to boil the medicine. Xiao Xian gave him the medicine and lifted his foot to leave. However, at the moment when he turned around, 2 black shadows shot out from Xiao Xian's hands. They brushed past the hair of several wanderers in front of him and shot towards 2 people leaning in the corner. The 2 people, a man and a woman, were young. They were with the wanderers of the Yanjiao tribe that they had met on the way. It was said that they knew each other. There were 7 wanderers from other tribes who had been brought here, including these 2 people. Men and women were not separated here, and no one dared to mess around here. There were Yanjiao people outside, so they all wanted to behave well. Naturally, they all stayed obediently. After entering the cabin, the man and the woman began to communicate with others, but they did not speak much these 2 days. Especially when the Yanjiao tribe warriors came in, they basically did not speak. Several times, the Yanjiao tribe warriors came in and glanced at the young woman many times. Every time when everyone thought that the Yanjiao tribe warriors had taken a fancy to the woman, the Yanjiao warriors would leave. Everyone saw the young woman shrinking in the corner. They all wondered if it was because the warriors always looked at her that she was so scared that she hid in the corner. For this reason, there was even a young wanderer in front of her. At this time, no one in the cabin expected Xiao Xian to suddenly attack. When the 2 wanderers saw Xiao Xian's action, they were so surprised that their eyes widened instantly. They did not have time to dodge and felt a sharp pain in their necks. It was like being stabbed by a burning stone awl. The pain came suddenly and fiercely. Moreover, this kind of pain quickly spread through every nerve and spread to every part of his body. It was as if countless stone awls had formed and pierced into every muscle and every part of his internal organs. It was as if they had taken root and could not be pulled out. This kind of pain that came in an instant and spread in a very short time made them want to scream and jump up. As soon as they moved, they were forcibly pressed down by a strong force. The man also wanted to take out a small stone knife hidden in his animal skin coat, but Xiao Xian lifted him up forcibly. The next moment, his face directly hit a thick wooden shield on the ground, which was left by the warriors on the ship. His head was not clear, and after being pressed and hit, he became more dizzy and painful. After a few seconds, he really fainted, and 2 streaks of blood flowed from his nose. The young woman did not persist for long and fainted. No one in the cabin expected Xiao Xian to suddenly attack. For a moment, the cabin was dead silent. Just now, they thought that this person was easy to talk to and was not as fierce as the others. But now, he attacked so quickly? The wanderers thought, sure enough, the Yanjiao tribe was like other tribes, killing wanderers casually. They thought that they would be reborn. If they knew someone in the tribe would not be too harsh on them. At least, they would not kill them indiscriminately. But now, there were already 2 wanderers who were suddenly treated like this, and no one knew whether they were dead or alive. For a moment, the mood of the wanderers in the cabin was complicated. Not only the wanderers, but also the several totem warriors of the Yanjiao tribe who were guarding here were very puzzled by Xiao Xian's behavior. However, they would not doubt Xiao Xian's motives. In their view, Xiao Xian had made so many contributions to the tribe. What he was doing now must be right, even if it was not right. As for the wanderers' thoughts, they did not care at all. Compared with Xiao Xian, the wanderers were really nothing in the eyes of the Yanjiao tribe's warriors. Compared with Xiao Xian, who was more important and who was less important, they did not need to use their brains to think about it. Chapter 241. While the wanderers in the cabin and the warriors of the Yanjiao tribe who came in after hearing the noise had their own thoughts, they suddenly heard a cracking sound coming from the bodies of the two people who had fallen to the ground. The sound was not loud, but because no one was talking in the cabin, it was strangely quiet. Therefore, the people in the cabin heard the sound coming from the two people. Everyone turned in that direction at the same time and saw the two people's figures slowly changing. The two people who originally looked thin and weak due to their injuries and long and arduous lives were now elongated and bulging. Although they were not very strong, they were much better than their sickly and weak appearance just now. The warriors of the Yanjiao tribe felt danger from the two people. The wanderers in the cabin were also stunned. No matter how bad their eyes were, they could see that there was something wrong with the two people. This kind of change was not something that the wanderers could do. "Xian, who are these two people?" a warrior of the Yanjiao tribe asked. "They should be people from other tribes who have sneaked in." Xiao Xian did not say much. He told the people in the cabin to remember to take medicine, and then left the ship with the two people who had fainted. After Xiao Xian left, the wanderers in the cabin suddenly felt relieved. It turned out that he did not attack them for no reason, but because he saw that something was wrong. Thinking that there were totem warriors from other tribes hiding in their group, the wanderers became alert. They only stayed with the people they knew and kept a distance from the people they did not know. On the other side, Xiao Xian took the two people to another big ship, where Ao and the two team leaders were. "Are they the ones?" Ao looked at the two people who had fainted and asked. They had just been called over by Xiao Xian, who said that people from other tribes had sneaked in. Hearing this, they did not care about anything else and immediately rushed over. "It's them. Maybe they have been watching us since the beginning of the drumming tribe." Xiao Xian said. "Who are these two people?" Ta asked. "I'm guessing that they're from Bandit. Before we left, the drumming tribe lost something. It might have been something important. The shaman of the drumming tribe kept it, but it was stolen." Xiao Xian told Xiao Xian about his guess. That night, Xiao Xian found something strange. Everyone knew about it, but they didn't know that it was the shaman of the drumming tribe who had lost something. To be able to steal from a shaman in a tribe, that thief must be very capable. Ao and the others immediately became serious. "It's them." Ao pointed at the two unconscious people. "No, the person from that night wasn't caught. He escaped. These two should be robbers too, but they aren't as good as that person," Xiao Xian said. Even if they were not as good as the one who stole from the drumming tribe that night, these two people could not be underestimated. Since they dared to sneak into the Yanjiao tribe, could it be that they also wanted something from the tribe? Ao and the other two instantly thought of the fire crystals they had brought with them. A murderous look flashed across their eyes. "We can't let him live," the three of them said at the same time. "I know we can't let him live, but I want to know more from them. For example, the thief who could enter and leave the drumming tribe at will that night. Maybe he's also watching us, but he hasn't shown up yet." The two unconscious people were hit by the wooden thorns thrown by Xiao Xian. The thorns were smeared with a kind of plant poison brought back from the other side of the river. It could knock down a totem warrior in a short time, but the effect was as fast as it came. About an hour later, the two people woke up one after another. In the face of Ao and the others' questioning, they didn't tell the truth at all. It wasn't until Xiao Xian told them about the thief he met that night that they reacted a little. "Who is that person?" Xiao Xian asked. "I don't know," the woman said. Her breasts rose and fell with her breath. When she was brought here by Xiao Xian, her animal skin coat was also damaged. The temptation inside was partly hidden and partly visible because of the light. She looked at Ao and the others who were a few steps away with a pleading look in her eyes. "I only followed you because I was curious. I didn't steal anything from you. Please don't kill me." Because their hands and feet were tied, the poison in their bodies hadn't completely dispersed. Their mobility was limited. They could only move their bodies slightly and couldn't make any big movements. Xiao Xian raised his eyebrows when he saw the woman twisting her body and rubbing her animal skin coat even more. He looked at the three people behind him. This woman had a good plan. Perhaps she had experienced many similar things before, but this time, she met people from the Yanjiao tribe. This was a group of stones. In their minds, people who were classified as enemies or suspected to be enemies, regardless of gender, age, or appearance, would not be merciful. The man didn't say anything. He just lowered his head, thinking about something. When the room quieted down, he suddenly laughed wildly. "We're so stupid," he said. These words were obviously directed at the woman beside him. "We've been used as stones to explore the way. Haha, both of us are stones to explore the way." The man laughed loudly. 2 streams of blood flowed from his nose into his mouth, dyeing his teeth red. His eyes became crazy. If possible, he would probably bite the person closest to him to vent his anger. When they were in the forest, if they felt that there might be danger, they would throw a stone to see if there was anything in front of them that could threaten them. If there was, all the danger would be borne by the stone that was thrown out first. Now the crazy man understood the situation they were in. Since the people who were ranked higher than them had been in the drumming tribe, they must have also had their eyes on the Yanjiao tribe. However, the other party had never appeared. Since they didn't appear, they must have sensed danger. However, they didn't say anything and just watched the 2 of them come to explore. As for those who were more ambitious, they were hiding behind the scenes and watching. Not long ago, the wanderers of the Yanjiao tribe who got on the boat said that 3 people disappeared on the way here. The 2 siblings and their father were never found. "Did you do it?" Xiao Xian asked. The crazy laughter stopped abruptly. "You wanted to change into their appearance, but their father recognized you, so you killed another one. However, you also found that if you changed into the appearance of the Yanjiao tribesmen, you would be easily recognized. That's why you targeted the wanderers outside the Yanjiao tribe," Xiao Xian said. Looking at the 2 people who were silent for a few seconds and struggling to explain themselves, Xiao Xian whispered something to Ao and left the room. These 2 people might not know who stole the drumming tribe shaman's things that night, but judging from their reactions, they must have killed the wanderers of the Yanjiao tribe. Ao would not let them go. Not long after, the 2 bodies were moved out of the cabin and thrown into the river. In this area, there were many carnivorous fishes with sharp teeth. The fleet continued to move forward. The people in the tribe didn't care about the 2 missing people. Many people didn't even know that 2 people were missing on one of the boats. Even the wanderers didn't mention the 2 people who were missing. It seemed that nothing had happened, but those who were observant could find that the guards on every ship of the Flaming Horns tribe were much stricter, and they were watching people more closely. The fleet had been sailing along the planned waterway to the old haunt. However, they couldn't go directly to the old haunt. Therefore, they had to go by land. The boats couldn't be used anymore, but they couldn't just throw them away either. Sell them? That was not necessary. In the end, they followed Xiao Xian's suggestion and built carriages. They used the good they brought back from hunting, so they couldn't waste it. They dismantled the planks that could be used on the boats and rebuilt them into 4-wheeled carriages or multi-wheeled carriages. They didn't need to be too complicated, as long as they were stable. Besides, it would take more time to build something complicated, so the tribe couldn't stay in the same place for too long. After Xiao Xian drew the structure diagram, he asked the people who had participated in the shipbuilding of the tribe to continue to build the carriages. After the experience of shipbuilding, it was easier for these people to work together. They had the skills, so they didn't need to say too much. Before the carriages were built, the team wouldn't continue to move forward. The place that Xiao Xian chose to stay was surrounded by mountains and forests. There were very few tribes. If it were a small group of wanderers or a small group of travelers, they would probably be too scared to sleep in such a wild mountain. However, for the people of the Flaming Horns tribe, this was nothing at all. They scrambled to plunder in the surrounding mountains, scrambling to hunt those strong beasts that seemed to have more meat. Especially those ferocious beasts, which were released to hunt, directly scared away the beasts in the surrounding mountains. For several days, the warriors had to go farther to hunt. The Yanjiao tribe is really amazing. In the place where the wanderers were, he sighed with emotion. He saw a bear as tall as 2 people running down the mountain in the distance, as if it was running for its life. It seemed to be extremely terrified, as if it was avoiding its natural predator. It wanted to escape from this place, but not long after, it was easily pounced on by a wolf. Soon, it stopped breathing and was dragged back by the wolf to become food for the tribesmen. The performance of the Yanjiao tribe also gave the wanderers a boost. The more powerful the tribe was, the safer the wanderers who depended on it would be. At least they were less likely to become food because of the tribe's famine. Looking at the warriors' momentum of clearing the mountains and forests, it shouldn't be a famine, right? The wanderers thought. At the beginning of the shipbuilding, because the technicians were not familiar with it, they destroyed a lot of wood. However, as long as they were instructed properly, they could quickly learn. These carriages were certainly not as big as the boats, and the number of carriages was limited. They changed the boats into carriages and removed the planks one by one. At the beginning, when they saw the boats being dismantled, they were more or less reluctant. However, when they saw the carriages with wheels, their reluctance disappeared. 5 days later, 7 carriages were built. They were the kind that could shelter the wind and rain. The carriages were between 10 and 20 meters long. They looked like public buses. There were no horses here, so the ferocious beasts in the tribe were responsible for pulling the carriages. Other than Cha-Cha and Guihi's white bird, the others were all used as coachmen to pull the carriage. Chapter 242. The shaman was in the smallest carriage this time. Only he and the Guize were in it. Of course, the fire seed was also in it. The smallest carriage was also the most important one. The warriors around the carriage were the elite forces of the tribe. As for the one pulling the carriage, it was the alligator snapping turtle. Although it was usually too lazy to move, it was not necessarily slower than people on land. Even if it was not as fast as the others, as long as it could keep up with the speed of the team, it would be enough. The number of carriages was limited, so it was impossible for everyone to get in like the fleet. Only the old, the weak, the sick, and the pregnant got in the carriage. The warriors of the tribe did not mean to get in the carriage. Those who had not awakened their totemic power also tried to walk outside and only got in the carriage when they were tired. Many children, as long as they could walk, would be carried by their fathers. If they could not walk, they would get in the carriage to rest. When they were well rested, they would be carried down to follow them. They felt that this was also a kind of exercise. They could not be too weak. Especially after seeing the living conditions of wanderers and slaves, their desire to become stronger became stronger. In the past, they just followed the ancestral teachings and moved closer to the strong. But now, they were doing this for survival and for the whole tribe. The people of the Yanjiao tribe were like this, so the wanderers could not treat themselves as special cases. As long as they could walk, they would not get in the carriage. If they got in the carriage, they would be despised and even abandoned by the tribe. It was not easy to have such a hope to live a new life. Of course, they could not be cowards at this time. In the plan, the route on land bypassed several big tribes. At this time, the Yanjiao tribe did not want to have conflicts with the big tribes. According to the shaman, they should go back to the old haunt and ignite the fire seed first. Therefore, the tribe went to places with few people. They passed by many tribes and almost fought several times. However, when they saw the ferocious beasts pulling the carriages of the Yanjiao tribe, they hesitated. Finally, they just watched the team pass by their door. The shaman and the chief also restrained the people in the team. All actions should be taken according to the command. Don't act recklessly. The detour was not only to avoid unnecessary conflicts, but also to find food. The best way to find food was to go to places with fewer people and mountains and rivers. As long as the danger was within the acceptable range, they could go there. Go over the mountains? Can't go over the mountains? Who said that? It was not convenient to pull the cart, but they could carry it. A few soldiers could carry a cart full of people. The Yanjiao tribe was completely sweeping through the area. They swept all the way to the old haunt. No one knew how many of the wild beasts in the mountains were eaten. Wherever they passed, people and beasts were frightened. The mentality of the people in the team was also gradually changing. When they were on the other side of the river, other than staying in the tribe, they were always on guard when they went out. They wanted to minimize their presence, but here it was the opposite. When they encountered trouble, those who didn't have eyes and came looking for trouble, or those who were sent by others to probe, would use the most violent and direct method to tell those who were scheming behind their backs to put away their claws. Otherwise, they would be chopped off without mercy. Who knew how much blood was left behind along the way? However, there were also some travel teams that deliberately followed behind the Yanjiao tribe. Because of this, no wild beasts dared to attack them. As long as those travel teams didn't have any bad intentions, the shaman and the chief wouldn't care too much. They could even collect protection fees. I feel that we're almost at the old haunt. In the cart that was most tightly surrounded, the shaman looked at the dancing fire in front of him and said excitedly, "How many years had it been? What would the old haunt look like?" The shaman looked at the dancing fire and gradually became absent-minded. Outside, Xiao Xian looked around at the empty grassland. The soldiers who went out to hunt had already returned, but they looked quite depressed. There were many plants around, but few wild beasts. The food they found was not enough for them. Even if they could last for today, what about tomorrow? Maybe there would be fewer wild beasts tomorrow. What would they eat then? They thought that wild beasts were easy to get hungry, so they didn't like it. Now even the wild beasts were almost gone. "Chief, what should we do?" Kiki picked up a wild rabbit in his hand and shook it. He was very depressed. Tuo dragged a snake as thick as an arm back listlessly. This snake was not enough for him. Grumble, the input couldn't catch up with the output. Many soldiers' stomachs were already growling. Ao didn't know what to do, so he didn't answer immediately. "Let's go and trade for some food. We're not far from the Lu tribe. They have many wild beasts. I'll take some people to trade with them for some wild beasts. If we go further, we won't find much food unless we reach the old haunt. It's definitely not enough for the team." Xiao Xian said. Originally, most of the people here were rearing animals and farming. Moreover, there were very few mountains on this route. Even if there were, they were all low mountains. There weren't many large wild beasts. It was very difficult to hunt enough food. Ao had learned about the Lu tribe from Xiao Xian's records, so he naturally knew a little about it. Ao had a good impression of this tribe. They reared wild beasts to make a living. They were good people in the central region. Such a tribe was indeed worth trading with. After thinking about it, Ao nodded and agreed with Xiao Xian's suggestion. The team couldn't continue to wait here. Xiao Xian estimated the team's speed and agreed to meet Ao at a place. Then they took some water moonstones. Xiao Xian called 50 soldiers and left for the Lu tribe. After leaving for 2 years, they met the people of the Lu tribe again. The man named Yanzhou still remembered Xiao Xian. Hearing that Xiao Xian wanted to trade for some wild beasts, Yanzhou enthusiastically took Xiao Xian and the others to the tribe's farm to choose. Although they had heard Xiao Xian talk about the wild beasts of the Lu tribe, Kiki and the others were still surprised when they saw it with their own eyes. Seeing the reactions of Kiki and the others, Yanzhou showed a proud expression and started to boast about all kinds of animals in his tribe. For the soldiers who had been eating wild beasts for several days, when they saw those fat birds like forest raccoons, they almost drooled and stared at them. "Those were all meat, all meat. What do you think? What do you want?" Yanzhou asked Xiao Xian. He could see that in this trade, although Xiao Xian was young, he was the one who made the decisions. "Xian, that one. We must take the fattest one." Kiki hurriedly pointed out to Xiao Xian. "Which one do you like? I'll ask someone to bring it out for you." Yanzhou said with a smile. Xiao Xian pointed out some beasts, and the others couldn't help but pick some beasts by themselves. While Kiki and the others were choosing, Xiao Xian calculated the number of water moonstones they could exchange for. Fortunately, the value of water moonstones in the central region increased, so they could exchange for more beasts. When they finished, Yanzhou calculated the number of wild beasts twice in his mind and said, 250, right? Xiao Xian said, "Yes." Xiao Xian took out the corresponding water moonstones and handed them to Yanzhou. He looked at the 5 wild beasts that had been tied together and saw someone coming with a wooden cart. He said, "We don't need the cart." After confirming that Xiao Xian really didn't need the wooden cart, Yanzhou took out more than 10 eggs and said, "Since you don't need us to transport them, I'll give you some more eggs." The eggs were covered with rattan nets, and Xiao Xian asked Cha-Cha to carry them. As for the rest of the wild beasts, each of the soldiers had 5. Yanzhou's face twitched when he saw that Xiao Xian and the others could still run and jump while carrying 5 birds each. After sending Xiao Xian and the others out of the tribe, Yanzhou said with a smile, "If you need any wild beasts in the future, just ask someone to tell me, and I'll send them to you. Okay, we'll be back to our homeland soon. When we settle down, we'll walk around more often." Xiao Xian turned around and left the Lu tribe with Kiki and the others, carrying the wild beasts they got from the trade. "Where will you settle down?" Yanzhou asked. "The ferocious beasts' mountain forest." Yanzhou stood there, rubbing his frozen face, Yanzhou couldn't help but pick his ears and asked the person next to him, who was also stunned, where did he say they would settle down in the future? The person next to Yanzhou swallowed his saliva and stammered. It seems to be the Ferocious Beasts Mountain Forest near the Wanshe tribe. The Ferocious Beasts Mountain Forest was a dangerous place, not to mention the Wanshe tribe. How could they settle down there? And they said they would walk around more often? Who dared to do that? Chapter 243. With the food brought back by Xiao Xian from the Lu tribe, the tribe was in a much better condition. Apart from sleeping and resting, the tribe was always on the road. The tribes who saw this team, as well as the travelers, were very curious about the Yanzhou tribe. It was not that there had never been such a large-scale migration, but many people had never seen such a powerful tribe. The Yanzhou tribe's name gradually spread through the traveling team. In the middle of the team, the shaman was in the carriage. The shaman sat by the small fire pit, counting the days in his mind. The fire in the fire pit was much bigger than before, and it was still jumping happily. However, if you looked carefully, you would find that there seemed to be a faint barrier around the fire pit. The shaman had specially made this barrier. According to the animal skin scroll left by the ancestors, if the fire seed was not dealt with by other tribes, there would be a competition between the fire seeds, and the loser would be suppressed temporarily. This was a situation that no tribe wanted to see, because it would affect the tribe's morale. The Yanzhou tribe did not want to attract hatred as soon as they came out. This was also why, except for the travelers of the Yanzhou tribe, few people could feel the fire seed here. And those who guessed that there was a fire seed here and had evil intentions were all defeated by the Yanzhou warriors in the most direct and violent way. On the way from the drumming tribe, the team took in more than 200 travelers from the tribe, both on the water and on the land. There were also some travelers from other tribes. Xiao Xian counted the number of travelers, and now there were almost 200 people. Seeing that the destination was getting closer and closer, the team began to become restless. The restless ones were not the original group of people of the Flaming Horns tribe, but the wanderers of the tribe and other tribes who joined later. These days, these travelers all knew the destination of the Yanzhou tribe. As soon as they heard that it was the Ferocious Beasts Mountain Forest, some people began to be afraid. Especially in the past few days, the Yanzhou warriors who were guarding the wanderers would always talk about the ferocious beasts. They talked about who had been eaten by the beasts, who had almost been bitten to death by the beasts, and so on. The injured warriors would also talk about the dangerous situation they had been in when they encountered the beasts. The warriors of the Yanzhou tribe could talk about ferocious beasts for hundreds of days without repeating themselves. After all, they had been in contact with ferocious beasts since they were very young. Originally, the topic of ferocious beasts made these wanderers worried. Listening to it was like listening to a scary ghost story. Every day, different people talked about the same topic. It was impossible to pretend that they didn't hear it. Therefore, they had more and more thoughts in their minds. That night, the team stayed at the foot of a mountain for the night. He was sleeping in a daze when he heard the person next to him wake him up in a low voice. "What? Are you under attack?" He woke up with a start. There was nothing he could do about it. This was the wilderness, and he had heard too many stories about ferocious beasts recently. The first thing that came to his mind when he was woken up was a ferocious beast. He was about to say something, but his mouth was covered by someone. The person who woke him up was someone who had a good relationship with him in the Longboat tribe. They were very familiar with Yanji and the others. "Look over there," the person who woke he up said in a low voice. The fire around them had almost burned out. The flame was much smaller. Only those who were close to the fire could see it clearly. A little farther away, there was only a vague shadow. He and the others were a little far from the fire, but they could see the figures over there. Several figures got up from the ground, carrying animal skin bags and a few belongings. They tiptoed out of the crowd. There were also hunting warriors around. When they noticed these people, they asked, "What are you doing?" Those people were scared when they were called, but they still answered in a trembling voice, "I drank too much water. I want to relieve myself." The warrior who was on night watch yawned and said carelessly, "Come back quickly. Don't go far." "Hey, I'll come back when I'm done." "I won't go far." Those wanderers hurriedly promised. After those people left, he was about to talk to his companions who had woken up, but he saw several people get up and leave with the excuse that they had diarrhea. The warrior who was on night watch just muttered, so troublesome. Then he said no more. What should we do? Here, shall we also leave? The person next to him asked. Those who left decided to leave because they had heard a lot about the ferocious beasts and knew that the destination of the Yanjiao tribe was the ferocious beast mountain forest. Compared with the ferocious beast mountain forest, they were more willing to go to other tribes. Some wanderers had always wanted to change places because of great oppression in their original living places. This time they came to the Yanjiao tribe. They thought that they would have a better life, but they did not expect that they would face a more severe situation. Fortunately, they had seen a lot of good places along the way in the Yanjiao tribe. The living conditions of several tribes were in line with their standards and within their plans. The wanderers did not understand the Yanjiao tribe. They thought that going to the ferocious beast mountain forest was a suicidal act. A tribe with such great potential like yours would definitely be able to gain a firm foothold in a safe place. Compared to some of the smaller tribes in the central region, your tribe would not be worse. Although you have fewer people, in 10 or 20 years, your population would probably double. Why would you want to seek your own death? Even if there were a few ferocious beasts in the team, so what? It was the ferocious beast mountain forest. There were more than millions of ferocious beasts there. Even the big tribes in the central region were not willing to go there. They just wanted to live a better life, not die with the Yanjiao tribe. 2 days ago, some people left, but not many. Tonight, maybe everyone realized that they would soon arrive at the ferocious beast mountain forest. This might be their last chance to leave. If the Yanjiao people found that too many people left tomorrow, would they be angry? Here, what do you think? Should we leave too? Tonight may be our last chance. If we miss this chance, we won't be able to escape when we enter the ferocious beast mountain forest. Someone asked Hier, didn't the Yanjiao tribe say that they could not hunt many beasts along the way? Even many large beasts in the forest were scared away by the Yanjiao tribe's beasts. The rest of the beasts were eaten by the Yanjiao warriors. Those beasts had been cleaned up. At least they would not go back in a short time. Therefore, as long as they followed the path of the Yanjiao tribe, they would be less likely to encounter those dangerous beasts. If they went back now, they would be safe. In the past 2 days, some of them had specially collected the feces of the ferocious beasts, so that they could use the feces of the ferocious beasts to intimidate the ferocious beasts in the forest. Only then would they be safer. Seeing Hier did not answer, the man poked Hier. Are you going or not? Hier gritted his teeth and lay down again. He whispered, no, I don't want to go back. And I believe in Yenji and the others. The surrounding people were silent, and then they lay down one by one. Forget it, let's bet. After making the decision, they lay down again. But they could not fall asleep. Listening to the sounds of those beasts leaving, they opened their eyes wide in a daze. In the dark night, where the firelight could not reach, and where the moonlight was blocked, the night watchman leaned against the trees. They looked at those who were running away from the team with a sneer, but did not stop them. The next day, the team continued their journey. The wanderers had decreased by nearly 1/3. It was obvious at a glance. However, the Yanjiao tribe did not seem to know, and did not mention it. Strangely, no one told the wanderers the story of the ferocious beasts. Some clever wanderers realized that this was a test by the Yanjiao tribe. When Yenji and the others saw Hier and the others, their tense faces relaxed. Fortunately, they were still there. It was the shaman's idea to test the wanderers. He had arranged it in advance, and no one dared to say anything. Even Yenji and the others could only worry in their hearts when they saw the restless wanderers. Xiao Xian took a piece of animal skin full of words and got on the shaman's carriage. More than 70 wanderers left. 6 of them are Yanjiao wanderers. Xiao Xian handed the animal skin roll to the shaman and said, the wanderers of other tribes were not so bad, but the warriors of the Yanjiao tribe treated them very well. Although they did not completely trust them, they helped them a lot. 2 days ago, when they were short of food, some warriors even saved their own food for them. However, some of these wanderers still left. Fortunately, there were not many of them. After the shaman took the animal skin scroll, he didn't read it. Instead, he closed his eyes. There was no disappointment or sadness on his face. However, those who were familiar with the shaman knew that he was the most terrifying when he was expressionless. Even if the 2 team leaders were here, they would tremble in fear. Xiao Xian did not interrupt the shaman's silence, and quietly waited for him to make a decision. After a long while, the shaman opened his eyes and said, if you leave, don't come back. Although his words were gentle, there was an irrefutable murderous aura in them. Xiao Xian had already expected the shaman's answer, so he nodded. I know. He wrote down the names of those who left and those who stayed. There was only one chance, and the trust of the Yanjiao shaman would only come once. The people who followed him all thought that in the Yanjiao tribe, the chief was in charge. This was the management style of many tribes, and they thought that the shaman was just an assistant in management. However, those who had lived in the Yanjiao tribe since childhood knew that the shaman had an absolute position in the tribe. Since the shaman had made such a decision, no matter Chief Ao or others, they would not have any objection. After getting out of the carriage, Xiao Xian looked at the sky. The weather is not very good. After leaving the shaman, Xiao Xian went to another carriage, in which sat the women who could not move or had not awakened their totemic power. Even if they could not move, they were not idle in the carriage. They had brought some tools and some animal skins that the warriors had obtained after hunting. They were here to sew and mend, and to make some leather boots. Putting down the animal skins and a few rolls of twine, Xiao Xian said to them, "Please make some long leather boots. Children also need them." Although they did not understand why, they did not ask. They just followed Xiao Xian's instructions. Chapter 244. After passing through a plain, the team finally saw the endless green area in the distance. At the border of the sky and the earth, there was a long stretch of green. Farther away, there were some tall mountains. Before they walked in, the tribal warriors' eyes lit up. The familiar feeling made their bodies instantly enter a state of excitement, as if they were back to the dangerous mountain forest on the other side of the river. It was the kind of feeling that made one's hair stand on end. It was not fear, but excitement that made one want to tremble. Of course, they were so excited because of the fire seed. As they got closer and closer to the old place, the totem power in the warriors' bodies was also surging, as if it was going to rush out. Is that the ferocious beast mountain forest? The people in the team looked at the green area in the distance with mixed feelings. The Yanjiao people were excited, but the wanderers were worried and confused. Thud! Thud, thud! It began to rain, and the rain quickly turned from light to heavy. Bean-sized raindrops fell from the sky. The dry ground was covered with dust because of the falling raindrops, and the smell of soil was everywhere. The sky quickly became gloomy, and the dark clouds were like a giant hand that was about to hit directly. In the eyes of the wanderers, the green area in the distance was like a big mouth full of sharp teeth, waiting for the prey to come to the door. Looking up, they saw the thick clouds as if they were going to suffocate them. In front of them was the famous ferocious beast mountain forest. The washing of the rain extinguished the fire in the hearts of some wanderers, but they still stood there, just because of the anger in their hearts. They did not want to retreat or go back. The team had become solemn at some point. The discussion and laughter had already stopped. The mood of the wanderers was also affected by the solemn atmosphere, and the anxiety in their hearts was miraculously calmed down. At this time, as long as they could walk, they got off the car, including those who were sick, disabled, and old. They were helped down by others. The shaman waved his hand, refused Guizei's help, and jumped out of the car. He was wearing the new leather boots that were sewn during the rainy season this year. The gray fur turned into mud the moment it landed. The shaman looked at the mountain forest with deep eyes. After nearly 1,000 years, how many generations had passed? Finally, they came back here. But the people who came back were not the same as before. "Let's go," Wu said. The ferocious beast's mountain forest was very large. The route taken by the Yanjiao team was not in the direction of the Wanshe tribe. There was still some distance between here and the Wanshe tribe, so they didn't see anyone from the Wanshe tribe. There was no need for Xiao Xian to lead the way. Every Yanjiao tribesman could rely on their intuition to find the right direction. Stepping into the forest, the sound of the rain hitting the leaves covered the sounds of the surrounding creatures. The various smells in the air were washed away by the rain again and again. The heavy rain showed no signs of stopping. In the rain, visibility was reduced. Many people couldn't see the situation in the forest in the distance, but it didn't matter. They just had to follow the people in front of them. Inside the carriage where the fire seed was placed, the faint barrier around the fire pit had been removed by the shaman. The deterrence of the fire seed immediately spread throughout the forest. Tap, 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 tap. On the soft ground piled up with countless insects' bodies, leaves, and dust, the warriors carried their animal skin bags and carried their weapons, walking in the muddy forest. Every step they took, they left a deep footprint on the ground. The rain from the sky rushed through the dense leaves and dripped to the ground. Soon the footprints were filled with water. Unless they couldn't keep up with the pace and couldn't feel well, the tribesmen would continue to walk in the team. Some children were led by their parents, and with every step they took, all sorts of rotting substances and mud on the ground would rub their ankles. Fortunately, the boots were long, and even some of the worms in the mud would only bite on the skin. They used their knives to cut off the thin insects with suckers on their feet and continued to walk forward. In the forest, there were many wild animals and ferocious beasts. Even with the deterrence of the fire seed, they couldn't completely avoid them. Those bold and fearless beasts in the forest could suddenly come out from the dense forest at any time. Behind the luxuriant trees, in the caves on the mountainside, lurking in the swamps, and so on, there were cold and bloodthirsty eyes staring at the team that suddenly entered the forest. In the past, if it were other people who entered the forest, they definitely wouldn't miss this delicious meal. However, this team was too special. There was the fire seed that they were afraid of, ferocious beasts like them, and a group of totem warriors with great strength. The smart, ferocious beasts hid and continued to watch. Those that rushed out were looking for death. The swinging of the beast's tail brought up rainwater that swept around like bullets, but was blocked by the warriors in the tribe who guarded around the team. The people in the advance group went to deal with the ferocious beasts that rushed out. In the forest, except for the roars of the ferocious beasts, the other warriors didn't speak. The silent killing was unprecedentedly violent and ferocious. The splashing blood of the beasts mixed with the rainwater and dripped on the ground, dyeing the path that everyone walked on red and filling up every dent in the footprints. No one in the team made a sound, nor did they stop. When the ferocious beasts rushed out, naturally there would be people to resist them. What they had to do was to continue to walk in that direction. If the wanderers who followed them didn't want to be left behind, they would probably fall to the ground and their legs would be soft. Maybe because of the heavy and solemn atmosphere in the team, when they saw the ferocious beasts rushing out of the forest, they wanted to scream, but they couldn't make a sound, as if they were strangled by the neck. The silent group unswervingly walked in that direction, as if they were on a pilgrimage. Xiao Xian put away his knife and didn't care about the ferocious beast that had been cut down on the ground. The other warriors also didn't care about it. They were like sacrifices, the sacrifices that the Yanjiao tribe returned to the old land. The heavy rain lasted for a long time. Xiao Xian had already cut down more than 10 ferocious beasts with the other warriors. Fortunately, they were not in the depths of the ferocious beast forest. There were few ferocious beasts here, and they were not particularly powerful. Xiao Xian threw his animal skin coat on the car, bare-chested, and let the rain wash over his body. There were many people who did the same as Xiao Xian. Everyone had the same totem pattern on their bodies. It was unknown when the totem pattern appeared on every awakened warrior's body, and on the wanderers of the tribe, there were also faint patterns. At the same time, in the old land of the Yanjiao tribe, a team of the Wanshi tribe was resting there. Every once in a while, a team from their tribe would come here. This was the shaman's idea. The chief didn't agree before, but after being persuaded by the shaman several times, he finally agreed. But the chief no longer led the team himself. Now the people of the Wanshi tribe had no fear of this ruined land. The more they came here, the braver they became. They didn't find a place to hide from the rain, so they just stayed here and waited for the rain to stop before going back. A group of people used the stones of the ruins as stools, and some people directly sat on the collapsed stone pillar that had been cut into several pieces. They talked and laughed, and when they were bored, they poked the carved patterns on the stone pillar with their stone knives. "Ah, the rain seems to be lighter," someone said. "Is it going to stop?" The thick clouds in the sky were quickly dispersing. Yang Guang's light shone through the clouds, dazzling their eyes. The rain hadn't completely stopped, but it seemed that it would stop soon. Just as they were laughing, everyone suddenly heard a crackling sound. It sounded like the sound of burning firewood in a bonfire. Someone lit the bonfire at this time. A man of the Wanshi tribe pointed to a direction with a frightened face. "Fire! There's fire!" The others looked in the direction he pointed. They saw a spark-like light spot in the middle of the pit that had been dug. Then, with the light spot as the center, 6 fire lines extended outwards. A huge sense of panic struck their hearts. Looking at the fire lines on the ground that were about to spread to his feet, a warrior of the Wanshi tribe turned around and ran, shouting, Go Go back to the tribe quickly." Before the rain stopped completely, they ran away in a panic. They suddenly remembered those who were almost killed in the beginning. Leave here." In panic, they even felt that the raindrops were like poisonous insects biting them. Chapter 245. Not long after the Wanchur people left, the Yanjiao people came to this place. However, the boundary stones engraved with patterns that had once been placed there were either no longer in their original places, or they had been smashed and hacked. The damage was quite serious, and there were even traces of burning. It was most likely done by the Wanchur people. Looking up, they didn't see the tall stone pillar above the forest. Xiao Xian suddenly had an ominous feeling. He was afraid that the fire pit was also in trouble. Not only Xiao Xian, but the shaman also had a premonition. His hand holding the walking stick was shaking. The burning line of fire had already reached the feet of the Yanjiao people. They didn't feel scared or horrified. They only felt a strong sense of familiarity, as if they had finally found a place to belong. The totems in their minds were all active and very energetic. Just stepping on this land made them tremble, as if they were filled with infinite power. The old place. This was the old place. Everyone's eyes were full of expectation. Almost there, almost there. A few more steps, just a few more steps. However, when they walked through the forest and came to the ruins, they were all stunned by the scene in front of them. Apart from the natural destruction, the collapsed house had been destroyed twice, thrice, or even more times by man. It was completely deformed. A huge hole had been dug out in the middle of the house. The fallen stone pillar was telling the people who came here what it had experienced. The entire ruins were filled with desolation. No matter how bright Yangguang was, it couldn't dispel the sadness. This is the old place?" Ao's voice was unsteady. How could it be like this? The Yanjiao people were a little confused when they saw this scene. The shaman hurried a few steps forward, as if he wanted to get closer and see the situation more clearly. His footsteps were somewhat staggered, and his hand that was holding the walking stick tightly clenched. The bulging meridians on the back of his hand throbbed, and because of the various emotions that arose from seeing this scene, his body could not help but tremble. How many years had it been? The ancestors of Yanjiao had waited for so many years to come back. They didn't expect to see such a scene. In addition to anger, there was also deep sorrow. Staring at the shattered stones, the shaman felt like his eyes were being pricked by needles. When Xiao Xian returned from this place, he had drawn the situation of the old haunt on a wu roll and showed it to the shaman. Therefore, in the whole tribe, other than Xiao Xian, the shaman was the most familiar with the old place. The shaman knew exactly where the house was, where the stone pillars were, and where the fire pit was. 2 years ago, although this place was still in ruins, with the desolation of a hero past his prime, it was far from being as dilapidated as it was now. Even the fire pit had been dug out. How preposterous! What a bastard! He raised his hand that was as old as tree bark and gently pressed it against his chest. Pain. It was a pain that he had never experienced before. From the day he was born, to the day he took over the position of a shaman, until now, the old man had never felt this way. There wasn't a single drop of blood, but the pain reached all the way to the bone. The old man was too emotional. Xiao Xian was worried that the shaman would suffer too much, so he hurried over to support him. Seeing the shaman's eyes fixed on the collapsed stone pillar that had been chopped into pieces, Xiao Xian said, "Now that we're back, let's build a taller one. I still remember the patterns carved on the stone pillars. When the time comes, we'll copy the patterns of our ancestors." Of course, these words were only a little comforting. The important thing was that this place had been destroyed again and again. Even if 90% of these things were deducted, it was enough to start a tribal war. This was a provocation, a trampling on the tribe's totem. How could the people of the Yanjiao tribe tolerate this? Ao clenched his fists in anger, and unrestrained anger radiated from this tribal chief. Who did this? Come out! Several roars, like cannonballs exploded in this forest, frightening many birds and animals. After calming down, Ao's mind became more flexible, and soon he thought of the person who might have caused all this. Xiao Xian had told them about the situation and what had happened here. The Wanchur tribe. Ao gritted his teeth as he stroked the engraved stones. As a person who had been exposed to stone tools since childhood, he already knew the marks on the stone tools. Only a small part of the marks on the stone were made a long time ago, and the rest, half of them were made between 1 to 2 years ago. The other half was very new, very new. The time when the carver carved the stone must have been before their arrival. There were many traces of human activities around, which showed that the people who destroyed their old haunt had just left. Stroking the stone, the sadness in Ao's eyes gradually disappeared, replaced by a rapidly accumulated fierce light, and his eyes became red with anger. They haven't gone far. I'll go after them. Ta couldn't help but say. I'll go too. Snow can help us find those people, Gigu said. Snow was Gigu's white falcon, which played a great role in scouting and finding prey. Take the others with you. They have a keen sense of smell, Xiaoxian said. Now that the rain had stopped, the smell wouldn't be completely washed away by the rain. Ao stood up, looked at the angry Yanjiao people behind him, and then turned his eyes to the shaman. The shaman didn't say anything. He just moved his hand away from his chest, and then waved it out heavily. Needless to say, everyone already knew the shaman's attitude. He let Ao and Xiaoxian do whatever they wanted. What about here? Ao asked. Don't worry. This is the old haunt of Yanjiao. The shaman's words were like a heavy stone falling on everyone's heart. Because it was the old haunt, because the fire seed and the fire vein were still there, only the Yanjiao people would be protected. Understood. Ao pointed at the ferocious beasts, indicating that they should go. He also pointed at 30 people. Xiaoxian and Caesar took the lead. Except for the turtle pulling the fire seed's carriage, the others all left. Whoosh! The people pointed at by Ao took off their animal skin bags, picked up their weapons, and quickly swept through the grass, chasing the ferocious beasts. In the forest, the people running met some ferocious beasts, and the originally concentrated group was scattered. A warrior of Wanshi was separated from his companions. Because he was too tired, he fell to the ground, his heart beating wildly, and his body trembling. He opened his mouth wide to breathe, and looked back from time to time, his eyes full of fear. Quack, quack! The sound came, and the warrior sitting on the ground bounced up from the ground, as if he had been stabbed by a nail, and started to run. Behind him, 5 carnivorous birds shouted and chased. They were very fast, and they were very familiar with the forest, running as fast as the people in front of them. Hearing the approaching footsteps and cries, the running warrior was desperate. He was the only one here. If he fought against the 5 birds alone, he would be seriously injured even if he didn't die. He closed his eyes hard, and when he opened them again, he clenched the knife in his hand, ready to turn around and fight. When the Wanshi warrior turned around and waved his saber, intending to fight desperately, he found that the 5 carnivorous birds, who had been chasing him, all stopped abruptly, and the muddy water splashed on the Wanshi warrior's body. Before the soldiers of Wanshi attacked, the 5 birds ran away as if they were running for their lives. They didn't even make a sound. Wanshi soldiers stood there, holding their swords. They stared at the 5 fleeing figures, panting heavily. Just when he thought he had temporarily saved his life, he heard the tapping sound again. It sounded similar to the footsteps of those carnivorous birds, but this time it was faster. Why did those usually arrogant carnivorous birds leave, as if they were fleeing? Was it because of him? An even greater sense of panic struck. He changed the direction of his escape and ran away from the sound of footsteps. But this time, the pursuers were much more powerful than the ones before. Tap! 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 Every sound of footsteps behind him was like thunder in his heart. He didn't even look back to see who was chasing him. He just ran away. In less than 2 minutes, a bird's head hit the running man like a hoe. The man was knocked down to the ground. There was a bloody hole in the back of his neck, and blood was gushing out. Mai, who followed closely behind the forest Rakos, also arrived. No matter whether the man was dead or not, he killed him with his knife. Go on. Mai patted the head of the forest Rakos and said. It had planned to chase the birds to have a good meal, but after hearing Mai's words, it had to give up the delicious food for the time being. It was not in a hurry. There would be plenty of time in the future. Similar scenes were happening everywhere in the forest. This time, except for Xiaoxian, who was an intermediate totem warrior, the other 30 people were all senior totem warriors. In the sky, Cha-Cha and the white falcon were flying. In the forest, several ferocious beasts were leading people to chase the people of the Wanshi tribe. As long as they were still in the forest, Ao would not let any of them go. At the same time, in the Wanshi tribe, the Wanshi shaman rushed into the room of the Wanshi chief, Bien, who was having a good time. Chief, the fire seed has changed. Seeing the shaman more panicked than last time, Bien was even more dissatisfied. In the past 2 years, the shaman had become nervous. He always felt there was a threat in the forest, but every time he sent people there, they found nothing unusual. Bien had always thought it was caused by the old guys in the central region who didn't like him, and he was also angry. Now looking at the shaman, Bien was surprised and doubtful. He planned to take a group of people to have a look. It would be better if they could find some evidence and throw it on the old guys. Didn't they say they wouldn't initiate a war? What about now? It would be better if they could blackmail them. Bien was not afraid of offending people. Anyway, this was his territory. He kicked the door open and called people. He planned to take a walk in the forest. Chapter 246. After the rain, the air in the forest became fresh. However, the people running in the forest were not in the mood to pay attention to the air. They only felt that the forest full of sunlight was full of murderous intent, which was driving them crazy. Puff! A sharp light flashed. The spear penetrated the body of a Wanshur warrior who was running. The man beside him did not look at his fallen companion. Instead of slowing down, he sped up. In the distance, there came some strange cries of beasts or ferocious beasts, which made people's hair stand on end. There seemed to be a cold current in the forest, which made the birds and beasts that used to live here stay away. Even the ferocious beasts began to look for other places. Yangguang was fine, and the water on the ground reflected the dazzling Yangguang. However, the running man only felt that the temperature around him was dropping rapidly. His eyes, which had been filled with anger because of being chased, were now filled with endless panic. Feeling the approaching killing intent, the running man's pupils suddenly shrank. He felt that a chill was rushing up his spine, and the back of his neck was cold. What should he do? The running Wanshur warrior anxiously tried to think of a way to survive. Suddenly, his eyes lit up. Yes, there was a giant bear. He remembered that there was a giant bear around. He could lead the pursuers behind him to the giant bear. Perhaps the giant bear would shift its target to them, and he could take advantage of the chaos to escape. The more he thought about it, the more he felt that it was feasible. The face of the Wanshur warrior became gloomy because of extreme fear, and his face was so distorted that it could not be seen clearly. Here it was, almost there. Look, the giant bear was sleeping. He could see a tuft of dark brown hair behind the bush. It was the small one. The big one must be nearby. Great! The sleeping giant bear moved its semicircular ears and sniffed. It smelled the food and opened its eyes. Its sleepiness quickly faded away, and it looked around to find the specific location of the food. The running Wanshur warrior almost laughed out loud when he saw the moving figure behind the bush. However, before he could laugh, the invisible pressure became heavy as the chasers approached quickly. It made it difficult for him to breathe, and his steps were unstable. Senior totem warrior? He himself was a mid-level totem warrior, but the person who brought him such pressure was no worse than the leader of Swanee, right? He didn't have the time to think about who this domineering and ferocious person was, nor did he have the time to be surprised. The other party's movements were too fast. By the time he wanted to see clearly who it was, his vision had already become blurry due to the huge pressure. The roar of the air riot sounded in his ears. It was like a mountain torrent, covering the sky and earth with a destructive aura. It enveloped him and then smashed down. Bang! The ground instantly caved in, forming a mud pit. The edge of the pit was splattered with blood from the inside out. It had just rained, and because of the violent smash just now, the muddy water spread out and flowed back into the pit. Mixed with the fresh blood, it gathered in the pit and drowned the person who had been smashed to the point of being unrecognizable. Xiao Xian rode on the wolf and looked at Ao, who was standing beside the pit with his hands covered in blood and was still furious. Ao's body was covered with muddy water and blood. Coupled with the strong and violent evil spirit, he looked like a god of death who had just been released. Looking away from there, Xiao Xian looked at the bushes not far away. The bare paw that had just stretched out was drawn back. Crack! The sound of the bare paw breaking the branches was quite clear in this stagnant area. Xiao Xian Ao, who was covered with evil spirit, and Caesar, who was grinding his teeth, all looked over there. The giant bear cub hiding behind the bushes had a flash of fear in its eyes. Retreat, retreat, turn around and run away. In fact, Xiao Xian and Ao had already noticed the guy behind the bushes. But at this time, they were not in the mood to hunt ferocious beasts. Their goal was the people of the Wanshur tribe in the forest, so naturally, they would not pay more attention to other ferocious beasts. As long as those ferocious beasts did not hinder them from finding their enemies, they would not pay attention to them. The giant bear cub ran towards the mother bear. Seeing its savior, it was about to roar, just like when it was in trouble and asked for help. However, as soon as it opened its mouth, a bear paw slapped it. The giant bear cub was stunned and forgot to roar, staring at its mother blankly. The mother bear stood up and carefully looked around. Then it landed on all fours, growled and bared its teeth, and left with the cub. This place was too dangerous. They could not stay here any longer. It was better to go to other places. In the group of people of the Wanshur tribe, the one who ran the fastest and had the best luck finally reached the edge of the ferocious beast mountain forest. Ha ha ha, I still managed to escape. I still managed to escape, he shouted in his heart. Rushing out of the forest, he looked forward and saw Bien and his men coming this way. Did they know something happened in the forest, so they came to save us? That was better. The one who ran out of the forest was ecstatic. He decided that he would never go into the forest again. If someone died, let others die. He would not go in anyway. He would find an excuse to pretend to be dead. However, while he was rejoicing that he had escaped this calamity, he did not notice the fear in the eyes of the people Fuin brought with him when they looked behind him. Like the wind blowing. A gray figure jumped out of the forest, landed on the ground, and jumped up again like a tight spring. In an instant, it caught up with the one who ran away. It seemed that it had already predicted where the prey would run to the next moment. When Caesar jumped up and landed, the wolf paw just pressed on the man who ran away. Crack! The wolf paw almost penetrated the man's body and stepped on the ground. Blood spread out. The wind from the forest carried the smell of mud after the rain, and also the smell of blood that made people's hair stand on end. The people with Bien were all speechless, as if they were stabbed in the throat with a knife. They just stared at the man and the wolf who rushed out. Who was this man? Bien looked at the totem pattern on Xiao Xian's body and searched for the totem patterns of each tribe in his memory. He even compared the totem patterns of several well-known tribes in the central region, but none of them matched. Frowning, Bien was a little flustered. This was different from what he had expected. Even a moron would know that something was wrong. As for the wolf that just jumped out of the forest, a ferocious beast? Or a tamed ferocious beast? No wonder this guy could be so arrogant. He dared to chase people here and trampled them to death in front of him. Bien's eyes were gloomy. This warrior also looked very young. A senior totem warrior? No, he should not be. At best, he was just a good intermediate totem warrior. Bien could still feel this. However, he did not know why he felt a strong threat from this intermediate totem warrior. Anyway, he was just an intermediate totem warrior. No matter which tribe he was from, even if he had a ferocious beast with him, could they not even deal with a ferocious beast and an intermediate totem warrior? If this spread out, they would be laughed at. Bien was about to take action, but suddenly he felt a breath that made him extremely afraid. He stopped his action abruptly. The breath of a strong man. A figure rushed out of the forest. He rushed out at a fast speed, but he could stop and stand still in an instant. His feet stepped on the ground, making a bang sound. The wet soil on the ground splashed around like waves. The ground trembled. Even the people of the Wanshur tribe, who were hundreds of meters away, could feel it clearly. Bien's eyelids suddenly twitched. A senior totem warrior. And a senior totem warrior who was not inferior to him. Such a person should appear here. And when did they arrive? Bien was thinking about how to deal with the senior, intermediate, and ferocious beast in front of him. However, he saw several figures rushing out of the forest one after another. Bang! 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 Almost in the same way, they rushed out and stood still in an instant. The ground shook many times. The people of the Wanshur tribe were so shocked that they forgot to count. Bien's eyelids kept twitching. Senior, senior, and senior. These people who came out were all senior totem warriors. Bien felt that the muscles on his back became stiff. Even the movement of twisting his neck became difficult. This situation was simply too shocking for him. While the people of the Wanshur tribe were stunned, Xiao Xian looked at these Yanjia warriors. Since they could come here, they must have dealt with the people in the forest. Xiao Xian and the others did not speak. After all, Ao was still here. With a gloomier and fiercer face than Bien, Ao held the spear in his hand. Clang! A deep mark appeared on the ground in front of Ao. It was obviously made by the spear. The mark was less than 2 meters long under his feet. However, in the eyes of everyone who saw this scene, this line seemed to extend out. Anyone who enters the forest, kill. Every single word was like a heavy blow to his heart. The fearsome beast forest was the boundary between life and death. Following Ao's words, more than 30 people came out of the forest and stood in a row. There were not many of them. They were more than 10 meters away from each other. Compared to the people of the Wanshi tribe, it was very sparse. However, when the invisible aura spread out, it seemed to build a high and heavy wall, a barrier that could not be climbed. Even though they were so far away, the people of the Wanshi tribe still wanted to step back. It was too uncomfortable to face this pressure. Looking at the mark on the ground and looking up at the row of people, the people of the Wanshi tribe swallowed their saliva. These people with strange totem patterns still had a lot of blood on them. It was as if they had just been washed by the evaporation of blood. They had never seen such fierce eyes. It was as if they were facing the ferocious beasts in the fearsome beast forest. Facing the merciless ruthlessness, they could not help but be deeply afraid, even if they had sabers in their hands. These people were different from the people of other tribes they had seen. They did not fight. Their aura alone was enough to make them want to retreat. Fuji's face became uglier. Pulling the restless Wanshi beast beside him, Feng Xiu's eyes twitched continuously. The sudden appearance of these people who dared to challenge him made him angry, and his expression became extremely ferocious. However, behind the anger, there was a trace of fear that was spreading. It was a kind of intuition. Although the two sides had not really fought and killed each other, Fuji really did not have confidence in facing these people. In addition, how many more people like them were there in the forest? How many more had not shown their killing weapons? Even in the depths of his heart, Fuji was glad that these people only drew the boundary in the forest. Although he was not confident, as the chief of the tribe, he could not retreat even if he could not move forward. He could not show weakness verbally. Under the influence of all kinds of emotions, Fuji's face was a little stiff. You'd better not go out of the forest. After saying this, Fuji pulled the Wanshi beast fiercely and roared, "Let's go!" Ao suppressed the desire to fight with these people and said to himself in the bottom of his heart, bear it, now is not the time. Wanshi tribe, just wait. When the fire in the old land is reignited, when the wanderers come back and the tribe is stable, we will take revenge. Let's go back, Ao said to the others. Xiao Xian glanced at the direction of the Wanshi tribe, patted Caesar, and turned to follow Ao back to the fearsome beast forest. From the beginning to the end, except for Caesar, none of the ferocious beasts in the forest appeared in front of the Wanshi people. And the Wanshi people who had seen them were speechless. Chapter 247. When Xiao Xian returned to the old land with Ao and the others, the place that was full of gravel and debris had been cleaned up. The decent weeds had been pulled out and the dangerous plants in the surrounding woods had been cut down. As for the beasts, they had already run away. Many of them were in the pot. The place where the fire pit used to be had been piled up again. It was almost twice as big as the one on the other side of the river, and also the size of the original one. As long as the underground fire vein was still there, the fire pit could still be restored to its original state. The fire vein was left behind by the ancestors when they left in a hurry. It was a part of the fire seed. Perhaps the ancestors of Yanjiao left in a hurry because of the sudden natural disaster, but they did not expect that they would leave for nearly 1,000 years. During these years, the fire seed that had left had never returned. If they really wanted to move, it would take time to completely take the fire seed away. Just like on the other side of the river, the shaman took a long time to take the fire seed away from the fire pit, and then spent a lot of effort to completely remove the fire seed from the fire pit. Fortunately, now they were all back, and the fire vein was not completely destroyed. Although the fire pit had been rebuilt, the fire seed had not been ignited in it for the time being. The shaman had to hold a sacrificial ceremony, and then ignite the fire seed in the fire pit to connect it to the fire vein. The surrounding people had already started to cut down trees to build houses, and the strong totem warriors were carrying stones. The shaman stayed in the carriage and did not come out. When Xiao Xian came back, Guizhe was jumping out of the carriage with the processed herbs. "What's wrong?" Xiao Xian looked at the wooden carriage and asked Guizhe. "The shaman is in a bad mood." Guizhe sighed. It was not easy to come back here, and seeing the mess, it would be strange if the shaman was in a good mood. Moreover, according to the shaman's style, Everything he saw and felt should be recorded in the Wu roll and passed down in the future. Xiao Xian knocked on the door frame of the carriage. "Come in." The voice from inside did not sound happy or angry. It was hard to tell whether he was happy or angry. When it came to this old man, it meant that he was unhappy. Sure enough, after Xiao Xian went in, he saw the shaman writing on a roll of animal skin. "How is it?" the shaman asked without raising his head. Xiao Xian briefly explained the situation. "Ao is right. We still need some time to catch our breath." The shaman then asked, "Can you copy that stone pillar?" "Yes. However, it would take some time. The stone was not easy to find, and it also needed to be excavated. Why don't I go look for him now?" Seeing the broken stone pillar, Xiao Xian didn't feel good. 2 years ago, when he came here, the stone pillar was like a landmark. He even sat on it. The shaman shook his head. "No, let's put that aside for now. When the fire is ignited, the first thing the tribe needs to do is to go out and meet the returning wanderers." When the fire was reignited in the old land, the wanderers who had left would come back. This was what old he had told Xiao Xian. "What about the time of the sacrifice?" Xiao Xian asked. "Tomorrow night." The time of the sacrifice was set. Now everyone had to prepare for the sacrifice as they had done in previous years. They took water to wash the stains on their bodies and clothes, and prepared the sacrificial animal clothes. But this time, there weren't as many steps as there had been at the beginning of the year. They just needed to ignite the fire in the fire pit of the old land. The next night, after washing and changing into the sacrificial animal clothes, the Yanjiao tribesmen gathered around the fire pit, including the wanderers who had joined the team later. As for the wanderers outside the Yanjiao tribe, they didn't join in, but just stayed aside and watched. In the sacrifice, the more important the person was, the closer to the fire pit. Even in a different place, this rule still existed. Xiao Xian was the only intermediate totem warrior in the group closest to the fire pit. The cart with the fire pit was already next to them. The atmosphere around was quiet and solemn. The wanderers who were a little further away stared at the fire pit and didn't dare to say a word. This was not the original mountain, and the place where they were now was not the top of the mountain. Looking around, in the distance, there were mountains around. In comparison, this place was at a lower place, and with the surrounding woods, it was not conspicuous. Amidst the silence, the shaman carefully got into the car. After a while, he got out of the car with a small flame in his hand. However, this flame was twice as big as the one he had left the other side of the river, and it was still dancing in his hand. As the shaman approached the fire pit step by step, a flame appeared in the fire pit and broke out of the ground. Then, from the center of the flame, 6 fire lines were divided into 6 directions. Each fire line passed through the crowd standing around and spread further away. The closer the shaman was to the fire pit, the brighter the flame in the fire pit, and the thicker the 6 fire lines were. When the shaman walked into the fire pit and put the fire pit in the center of the fire line, a beam of flame rushed up to the sky, like a tower of thousands of feet. It was very eye-catching in the dark night. The shaman, who had left the fire pit, knelt on the ground with the others and welcomed the reigniting of the fire pit with the highest ceremony of the tribe. In the fire pit, the fire pillar quickly became thicker and spread to the whole fire pit. The rolling flame covered the rolling mountains in the distance with a layer of fire, like a sudden wonder of heaven and earth. The flame was all over the sky, but not a single leaf was burned. Not only that, the flame in the fire pit spread along the 6 fire lines. Each fire line was like a fuse, which led the fire of the fire pit to the distance in an instant. And the flame from the ground fire line was like a giant magic weapon that suddenly appeared in the world. It split the black night sky into 6 parts, showing an indescribable majestic scene of heaven and earth. The wanderers on the edge suddenly felt their bodies shake, and their spirits were shocked. The surrounding momentum made them tremble, and they felt their hair stand up. They had never seen such a situation. The fire pit, this was the power of the fire pit. It made people have an impulse to worship it immediately. Only this kind of fire pit could drive away the ferocious beasts. Only this kind of fire pit could protect the tribe and reproduce in this forest. Xiao Xian watched the strange changes of the fire pit and felt that the totem power in his body was surging with the rising flame, little by little. Once, the totem flame in his mind was like a rootless floating object, drifting erratically. But now it seemed to have found a support and a point to rely on. It was stable, and the flame was higher. Since the fire pit and the fire line were connected, Xiao Xian felt that his body was in a state of extreme excitement, and the totem in his mind was also in a constant state of excitement. The totem power in his body from little drops became surging like a river, running endlessly in his body, as if it was going to come out from every pore. The totem patterns on his body became deeper and clearer. His heart was beating strongly. His blood seemed to be boiling. All the emotions were ignited in an instant. Although Ao was still kneeling on the ground, his upper body stood up. He looked up at the fire tower in the fire pit, raised his arms high, and roared loudly. Because of the excessive emotion, his voice was obviously hoarse. It sounded like he was venting, but also like he was calling. The surging totem power, along with the boiling blood, bloomed and rushed out through the skin of his body. On his body, under the light of the fire, the sacrificial animal suit was shocked by the airflow around the totem warrior, and suddenly there were cracks on it. The ground where he was kneeling was impacted by the erupting airflow. Gravel and dust flew everywhere, and the flying sand was quickly engulfed and swallowed by the raging flames. After Ao, the team leader, the leader of the hunting group, and the hunting warriors also roared one after another. Their voices, accompanied by the light of the fire, echoed in the forest. A sense of pride that they had never felt before welled up in their hearts. In the heart of every Yanjiao tribesman, there was a sense of honor and pride as a Yanjiao. This sense of pride had never disappeared, and had lasted from the tribe thousands of years ago to the present. They observed with their eyes and felt with their hearts. There was an invisible force around them, which made every blood vessel, every muscle, every bone, and even all the spirit quickly merged with this force. Xiao Xian looked in the direction of the fire pit, listening to the roars around him. With a smile in his eyes, he roared with them, sharing the excitement with them. The shaman looked at the flames that filled his eyes. He looked at the familiar two-horned totem in the middle of the fire pit. Tears flashed in his eyes. We are still strong, and we have never forgotten. Our glory is still there, but we came back a little late. At the same time, in the Wanshe tribe, the Wanshe shaman and the chief Bian looked at the small flame in the fire pit with gloomy faces. Not only the Wanshe tribe, but also other tribes could feel it, especially the tribes in the central region. Those big tribes felt it most clearly. The fire in their fire pits had been swayed because of this. Only a powerful fire could cause such a phenomenon. Who is it? In the whole central region, except for the few known people, who else could do this? Many people were puzzled. In a place farther away from the ferocious beast mountain forest, the shaman of the Mang tribe stood on a high mountain in the forest, glancing at the large green forest around, and then looked in one direction, with a complicated smile in his eyes. Those barbarians really came back, on the vast plateau, in the Feng tribe. He looked at the totem patterns on his body that were clearer than before. His shriveled and wrinkled face trembled, and then he knelt down deeply in one direction. Drops of tears fell into the grass and seeped into the soil. How many years had it been? Finally it came. He pulled his wife and grandson to kneel down. After a long time, when the totem patterns on his body gradually disappeared, he stood up. The old lady wanted to help He, who had been kneeling for a long time, but was pushed away by him. Now he felt full of strength. Although he was far less than those totem warriors, he was much better than before. He could even carry a bucket without trembling. Seeing that He was too excited and his body was still trembling, the old lady asked worriedly, "How do you feel?" He straightened his back, holding his grandson who had grown much taller, and said loudly, "Hungry." The old lady, "Pack up, we have to go back." He said. He had met several Yanjiao tribesmen from other tribes during the trading time of the grassland tribes. They had agreed that if they could really wait until the day when the fire in the old land was reignited, they would team up and go back together. Chapter 248. People in the Yanjiao tribe didn't know how many people lost sleep that night, nor did they know what the other tribes thought. Their thoughts were simple. Whatever the shaman and the chief told them to do, they just did. They didn't need to think about other things, they just needed to do their best. When the fire was reignited, everyone felt that their totem power had changed a lot, and it was a good change. That night, to the shaman and the chief's delight, another 7 people were promoted to senior totem warriors. When they absorbed the fire crystals, they didn't directly break through, and were stuck until now. Unexpectedly, they succeeded that night. Many people in the tribe said that when the fire returned to the old land, it was complete, and the ancestors' wish was fulfilled. However, Xiao Xian felt that although the fire seemed to be stronger than before, it was still incomplete. Only half of the fire seed that had been split into two had returned to the old land. The shaman didn't tell them, because even the shaman himself didn't know where the other half was, and he couldn't feel it. In the morning, Xiao Xian got up early. He wanted to help Old Ka build a house, but he was summoned before he started. Near the fire pit, there was a half-built stone house. It was for the shaman. Other people's houses could be delayed, but the shaman's house couldn't be neglected. The warriors who built the house didn't sleep all night, but they were not tired. They were still excited. When Xiao Xian arrived, there were more than 30 people gathered around. "Uncle Mai, why did the shaman call us here?" Xiao Xian asked in a low voice. "It seems to be about helping the wanderers." Mai replied. "So fast." Xiao Xian thought that the shaman would send people out when the house was almost finished. Because they had been in contact with many wanderers like this, everyone knew their fighting strength. They were stronger than those who had not awakened their totem power, but they were still inferior to the real totem warriors. The shaman hoped that everyone would help them, as many as they could. The shaman and the chief had been discussing this matter after the ceremony last night, and the list had been finalized. Xiao Xian looked at the people who had been called over. He was familiar with all the people gathered around the microphone. They were all from his previous hunting group. It seemed that they had to go out as a hunting group. When almost everyone had arrived, Ao called everyone over. There was a piece of wood erected there and a few pieces of gravel piled up beside it. Ao went over and stepped on the gravel. He unfolded the animal skin scroll in his hand and hung it on the top of the wood so that the people who were called over could see the drawings on it. What was drawn on the animal skin scroll was a simple map. This was the map that Xiao Xian had completed after collecting new information on the way to the old haunt. Ao drew 10 copies of these maps. There were about 500 people who were called over. Each team of 50 people would act in a team. There were exactly 10 teams, and each team would have one map. The leaders were all former leaders of the 10 hunting groups. The route had already been marked on the animal skin scroll, and each team was responsible for one route. While assigning tasks, Ao gave a simple explanation of the route for each team. The tribes around the route had been marked. Perhaps not all of them were marked, but the important ones were all marked. "Xian, you go with Mai and the others. Take them to the grassland and meet the wanderers there. You have been there once, so you are more familiar with it than them." Ao said. "Okay." Xiao Xian thought of the old man who sang the hunting song on the mountain. He wondered how the wanderers on the grassland were doing. Had they set off? Would he meet them? After assigning tasks, Ao asked everyone to go back and prepare. They would set off tomorrow. The 10 leaders were left behind. Ao had something to say to them. When they went out, the 10 leaders would still be in charge of the team. They had to know many things that were inconvenient for others to know. They had just arrived here and were not used to many things. This place was not like before, where they only needed to hunt ferocious beasts. Now they had to guard against people. Most of the time, people were more dangerous than ferocious beasts. At the same time, they had to adapt to the rules here. "Xian, you stay too," Ao said. In terms of understanding of this place, Xiao Xian was not as familiar as Ao. In fact, Xiao Xian did not know much. But after hearing a lot, he summed up some things, such as the gossip Yang Sui had told him, the relationship between each tribe, who were more famous, and so on. After assigning tasks, Ao asked the 10 leaders to leave, but Xiao Xian still stayed. "Anything else?" Ao asked, puzzled. "Well, leader, I was thinking, when we go to the grassland, I want to see if we can exchange for some livestock such as horses, cows, and sheep. Although the Lu tribe also has some, I think the breeds on the grassland are more suitable for us." Xiao Xian said. Ao's eyes flashed, and he nodded. Yes, the tribe does need some livestock. Here, there would be more and more people. People in the tribe could not focus all their energy on hunting like before. The situation here was more complicated. Besides, there would be more and more people in the tribe who could not awaken their totem power. Whether it was the wanderers from the Yanjiao tribe who came back or the other wanderers who depended on them, the number would increase. They also needed to consider the placement of these people. They could not just let them live in the tribe without working or contributing. Just as they had discussed before, the rearing and planting of the plants would be distributed to these people. They could not go out to hunt, but they could not even farm and raise livestock. The situation here was better than on the other side of the river. Some people who knew how to make pottery had already started making, and they were very successful. Others also needed something to do. It would take too much time to completely tame wild animals. It was better to exchange some with people directly. You are right. Okay, I agree. Go. Ao said. Xiao Xian did not move. Ao waited for a while, but still did not see Xiao Xian leave. He looked up and asked, anything else? Xiao Xian twisted his fingers. Boss, water moonstones. Of course, he was waiting here to apply for public funds. Ao suddenly understood. He just said that the other team leaders needed to get used to it as soon as possible, but he did not think of it himself. Here, to get something, they had to take out other things to trade with others. It was not like in the old tribe, where they could just use a few simple stones or a few wild animals. Many people did not accept food at all. Wait, I will get it. Ao walked to the shaman. All the water moonstones were in the shaman's wooden cart. Xiao Xian left Ao's place with his share of water moonstones, and 9 more for the other teams. He also told them what Ao Wangwang said. They did not need to bring livestock like Xiao Xian did. It would be better if they could buy some seeds. They did not know which plants in the forest could be planted. The species were not stable. What if they died from eating the plants? People who had not awakened their totemic power were not as strong as totemic warriors. Many tribes controlled their seeds very well and sold them at a high price. They did not even reveal how to plant them. When the time came, they would have to figure it out by themselves. After giving out the 9 water moonstones, Xiao Xian went to find Mai. He saw Yang Guang and his sister talking to Mai. Yang Guang and his sister were not among the people who went out this time. Not only them, but also the people who raised the ferocious beasts, except for Xiao Xian, could not go out. They and the ferocious beasts all had to stay in the camp. More than half of the people in the advance group had to stay, including the 2 team leaders. Mai was annoyed by the siblings and said, I can't do anything. If you want to talk, go to the chief. The people who went out were all personally selected by Ao. Even if they had objections, they had to go to the chief. But it was useless. Since the chief made this choice, he must have his own considerations. Otherwise, why didn't anyone dare to go to the chief when there were so many people who wanted to go out with them? Xiao Xian saw Yang Guang and his sister's bitter faces, and the 2 ferocious beasts who were so bored that they were kicking stones. He smiled and said, You stay in the tribe. You have to guard against invaders. After what happened in the drumming tribe, Yang Guang and his sister had a clear idea of invaders. Thinking of the Wanshi tribe, which was not far from here, Yang Guang and his sister narrowed their eyes. They thought that it was better to stay. Maybe they could catch some invaders. The next day, Xiao Xian said goodbye to Old Ke and left the tribe with Mai and the others. Caesar followed, and Cha-Cha flew in the sky. Caesar had already shown his face, so he did not intend to hide. As for Cha-Cha, except for Xiao Xian, it did not listen to anyone. The others in the tribe could not do anything to it. As for the tribe's aerial warning mission, Gigu's white falcon was there, so there was no need to worry. After being frightened, the people of the Wanshi tribe did not dare to go into the mountains in a short time, not to mention that their fire seed had been reignited. The places covered by the strong fire seed were unfavorable to the people of other tribes. The closer they were to the fire seed, the more their totemic power would be affected, and their fighting power would be weakened. This was another reason why small tribes were easier to destroy and big tribes were stronger. Because the fire seed of big tribes was stronger. Although it was a short time, it was obvious that the shaman and the chief were in a hurry. Fortunately, because of the reignited fire seed, everyone was not tired at all. Instead, they were full of energy, especially those who were on the list. They were more excited at the thought of meeting more people and things from other tribes. They were also envied by those who stayed in the tribe. Xian, how long will it take for us to reach the grassland? Can we come back before winter? Lang Jie, who was carrying the equipment, could not help but ask. It's a bit far, but we can definitely come back before winter. Even if we can't, the winter here is not as cold as the winter on the other side of the river, and there are no ferocious beasts. We can handle it. Xiao Xian said. That's good. Lang Jie looked expectant again. A long time ago, his goal was to become an intermediate totemic warrior in his lifetime. Now, he was already an intermediate totemic warrior. He also felt that he might be able to become a senior totemic warrior in the future. My father said that we are the generation blessed by our ancestors. Lang Jie said with emotion. The others also agreed. But no one noticed that Caesar, who was walking in front, snorted, with a trace of disapproval in his eyes. Chapter 249. When Xiao Xian and the others went to the grassland, Old He went to the Feng tribe and waited on a low mountain on the border of the tribe every day. According to his agreement with the others, the people on the grassland should leave from here. However, 1 day passed, 2 days passed, 5 days passed, and Old He didn't see any trace of those people. On the 10th day, Old He didn't let his wife and grandson wait here with him. He would inform them when he saw them. The old lady was old and not a wanderer of the Yanjiao tribe, so she was not as healthy as Old He. The 10-year-old Anai was asked to look after the sheep, so that they could get some food in return. After all, no one knew how many days they would have to wait to leave. Old He knew that the grassland was very large and it would take time to come here, so he waited at ease at first. However, on the 15th day, Old He was really anxious. He was afraid that the team would forget him. After all, there were only 3 of them here, 2 of whom were old and 1 young. Did they think it was troublesome to take them with them? Old He couldn't help but think about it. The wanderers on the grassland were divided into several groups, so it was impossible for all of them to go the same way. The person Old He contacted did decide to go this way. However, after 15 days, they didn't even see a shadow. Was it on purpose, or did they encounter trouble? If it was the former, Old He would take his family and leave. He knew that there were only 3 of them, and the journey was long and dangerous, but he was willing to take the risk. However, Old He believed in the latter. He knew that people would not easily abandon their tribesmen, but if they encountered trouble. He heard that there was a war on the other side of the mountain. If the wanderers encountered it, they might be involved. Thinking of this, Old He was more worried. He would rather others forget about his family than be involved in the war. Once involved in the war, they would be killed. It was rare for his indifferent temperament to become impatient. Old He still insisted on waiting on the mountain early in the morning with food until sunset. When Old He went up the mountain, his 10-year-old grandson Anai was helping Gua Er's family to look after the sheep. Including him, there were 5 people guarding the flock. In the past, there were only 3 of them. Sometimes, one of them could keep an eye on the flock. But recently, the tribe had been losing sheep. Sometimes there were cows or horses. The livestock was uncertain, and most of the lost animals were the young ones. The patrol team patrolled every day and night, but there were still cases of livestock being lost. Sometimes it was this house, sometimes it was that house. It had been more than 10 days. Some people said that they saw a pack of wolves moving around. Perhaps they were some cunning and swift wolves. There was a war between tribes on the other side of the mountain range. Therefore, in order to avoid the war, the wild beasts in the vicinity also moved around. Some of them crossed the mountain range and came here. Therefore, the patrol team had sent more people to pay attention to the traces of the wolf pack. Gua Er was listless recently. His favorite calf was missing. He had planned to raise it carefully to fight with his friends next door. However, he didn't expect that the calf was missing when he went to the cow pen the day before yesterday. He didn't want to stay with his friends for the next 2 days. It wasn't easy for him to find a newborn calf. He had even prepared the best pasture, but it was gone in the end. Anai, when do you think the wolf came in and took the calf away? Gua Er asked with boredom. I don't know. After a pause, Anai said, I don't think it was a wolf. In the past 2 years, because Gua Er promised Xiao Xian to take care of Lao He's family, his attitude towards Anai was better. Even if he didn't let Anai join their small group, he didn't feel sad for him. Sometimes when Anai was bullied by others, Gua Er would help him out. Therefore, Anai and Gua Er talked more. I don't think so either. It may be a fox or an eagle. There are many animals that steal livestock on the grassland. They all like to steal calves. Gua Er said with a fierce look. He took out a bone knife and chopped it in the air. If I know who stole it, I will chop it. After saying a few harsh words, Gua Er found that no one supported him. He turned his head and found that Anai didn't listen to him at all. He was looking around. Hey, did you hear what I said just now? Gua Er said with dissatisfaction. Anai didn't answer him, but asked, Did you hear any sound just now? What sound? Gua Er thought Anai was looking for an excuse. Anai thought for a while, but couldn't describe it. He didn't intend to pay attention to Gua Er's complaint. He stood up and looked at the sheep that were eating grass not far away. However, Anai didn't want to pay attention to it, but Gua couldn't stop talking and continued. Hey, I heard that you are leaving. When will you leave? Where will you go? Can you see Xiao Xian again? If you see him again, ask him to carve a wood carving of a wolf for me. I will exchange cattle and sheep for it. The wood carving was taken away by my father, and he didn't let me touch it. Gua said to himself. Gua. Anai suddenly said. What? One sheep is lost. Anai said hurriedly. Hearing this, Gua hurriedly stood up and stood on the wooden stool next to him. He looked at the sheep and counted them. His family didn't have many sheep now, and the livestock lost recently were all calves. So Gua directly counted the number of calves. No, you counted wrong. None of the calves are lost. Gua was relieved and said. When Gua was about to laugh at Anai for not knowing how to count, he heard Anai say, It's not a calf, it's a big one. I counted 4 times. It's really lost. It was still here this morning. Impossible. Gua didn't believe it and counted. Although he liked to play, he also clearly remembered the number of livestock raised by his family. He knew how many were consumed every day and how many were born. After counting, one was indeed missing. There were 4 people watching in other places. Although they didn't watch the sheep but looked at other places. As long as the sheep didn't run away, it was fine. Gua ran over and asked the 4 people. None of them saw the sheep leave the flock. Everyone was here, but he didn't see any wolves or foxes. Was it an eagle? He looked up to the sky and didn't see any birds. Even if an eagle came down to catch the sheep, it would make some noise. But Gua didn't hear it. Hey Gua, what are you looking for? A little girl of the same age as Gua's neighbor came over. It's none of your business. Gua was anxious now and his tone was not good. Knowing Gua's temper, Doya didn't intend to ask him, but turned to ask Anai next to her. Anai had a good impression of Doya, so he told her what had happened just now. Knowing the whole story, Doya didn't want to ask Gua to have a horse race. Her family lost a sheep yesterday. It was not too small or big. What are you going to do? Doya asked. Gua, go and talk to your father. If your mother is at home, you can talk to your mother. Anai advised. No, I'll look for it first. Gua didn't want to find his father who was patrolling now, nor did he want to wake up his mother who was sleeping. His mother had a younger brother or sister in her belly and needed to rest. Moreover, he hoped to find some clues and then tell the adults. I'll go too. Doya swung her horsewhip, rolled up her sleeves and followed him. Anai looked around and said something to the nearest shepherd. Then he chased after Doya and Anai. The shepherd didn't care about it. The children in the tribe ran around all day and nothing happened. There were patrols at the border, so they didn't worry. When Anai and Gua were looking for the missing sheep, Old He, who was standing on the low mountain, finally saw a team. The leader was the one who had contacted him. Old He, who was very happy, hurried over, only to find that the people in the team were very tired and had many injuries. There were 2 seriously injured people in the team, and he didn't know how many days they could last. They encountered the war on the other side of the mountain. However, they were lucky to be alive here. Originally, there were 32 people in the team. Because of the scuffle between the tribes on the other side of the mountain, 3 people couldn't follow them here. As for the 2 seriously injured people in the team, if they couldn't survive, there would be 5 people. This wander team had been walking at the border of the tribes. Therefore, even if they were seen by the patrols, as long as they were not bloodthirsty people, they would be fine. Old He wanted to take them to his home, but now it was a sensitive period. The people of the Feng tribe wouldn't let suspicious people enter the tribe. Therefore, Old He ran back to get some herbs for the injured people. I also brought some food. You can eat it first. Old He handed over the half-leg of lamb in his hand. It was definitely not enough for these people. But at least there was food. It was good for everyone to have a bite after roasting. When they were talking about the situation in the team, a patrol team of the Feng tribe rode over quickly. Gua's father was in the front. Old He, have you seen Gua? The man was so anxious that his forehead was full of sweat. No, what happened? Old He had a bad feeling, and his voice was trembling. A sheep was lost at home. Gua didn't even tell us. He directly took Anai and Doya to look for it. But we haven't seen them yet. Old He's legs were soft. Anai was the only child left in his family. If something happened, look, I'll look for it too. Old He said with trembling lips. The patrol team looked at the nearly 30 wanderers in front of them who were full of blood and asked, Did you come from the mountains? Have you found any abnormal situation, such as wolves and other beasts? There were indeed wolves and foxes running here. And, the man who spoke thought of something and said with a frightened face, there was also a kind of big worm. I heard that it was originally sleeping around the mountains. It was awakened by the war over there. It came out and ate many people. One of our team was dragged into the ground by them. I don't know if they came over. Worm. Stone worm? The man asked. Not stone worms. They have sharp teeth and are a little flat. They have many feet on their bodies. They don't leave any holes where they drill. They will block them with soil. We have been digging for a long time. The man who spoke cried. When they saw their companion being dragged into the ground, they all went to dig. However, their speed was not as fast as that worm's drilling speed, so they only dug out soil. Worms that drill into the ground, without leaving any holes. The patrol team was shocked. They looked at each other and saw the suspicion in each other's eyes. The livestock lost in the tribe might not be wolves or other beasts on land or in the sky, but a threat from the ground. Chapter 250. According to the description of the wanderers, the patrol team immediately went back to inform the others and tried their best to find it. Gua and the others might have encountered that kind of insect. The wanderers who were not seriously injured also helped to find it at the border. They couldn't enter the tribe, but they could still move around the border and help the old he. Since the faint totem patterns appeared on their bodies gradually became stronger. Especially a few days ago, they felt particularly carefree that night, which even made them have the illusion that they were real totem warriors. Because their bodies became stronger, they could walk all the way here, and so many people survived. In the scuffle over the mountains, some people wanted to kill them, but they were all killed by their joint efforts. Although they were inevitably injured, they also lost some people. When the Fong tribe was panicked because of the news brought by the wanderers, the 3 people who went to find the clues of the lost sheep also got into trouble, as everyone expected. The 3 children were panting heavily as they ran for their lives. Hurry up, it's catching up with us. Gua roared. They now regretted that they didn't inform the others directly at that time. Not long after they left the place where they grazed the sheep, they were attracted by some wool on the ground. After walking for a while, they didn't meet the patrol team, but they found that something was approaching behind them. The uplifted soil on the ground was approaching them quickly. The 3 of them ran and ran. The further they ran, the further they went from the residential area. At first, they were running and shouting, hoping that someone could hear them. They also thought that it would be great if they could meet someone from the patrol team. However, until now, they hadn't seen anyone from the Fong tribe. When they came to themselves, they found that the surrounding area was empty. Although they were still in the territory of the Fong tribe, they were close to the border, so few people came here. The pursuer behind them seemed to deliberately avoid the patrol team's active place, and had been chasing them here. The 3 had little strength to shout again, so they just ran. Thinking of what he had said before, if you find the animal thief, kill it. But now Gua knew how wrong he was. Run that way, don't run out of the tribe. Gua led the 2 to turn around, but soon, they found that they were still too naive. Another brown-red insect drilled out of the ground and blocked their way. The worm was wider than the 3 of them put together. The part of the worm that came out of the ground was longer than the length of 3 horses. Its small and sharp head had 2 chelicerae that opened and closed. Its 2 front legs were like 2 long and soft sickles, swinging agilely. One could feel the aura of death coming from it. Ah! Doya screamed, her voice a little hoarse. She shouted, hoping that the patrols around them would come and save them. However, no one appeared in the direction of the tribe. On the other side of the border, there were small hills. That was the boundary. After crossing those hills, they would be out of the Fong tribe's territory. Growing up, they had never left the territory of the tribe. The adults had warned them since they were young that they were only safe in the tribe. If they left the tribe, they would be persecuted by other tribes. But now they had no choice. Gua gritted his teeth, turned around and shouted towards the direction far away from the tribe, "Run." Doya and Anai followed him closely. When Gua was running, he thought of what his parents had taught him when he was a child. If you met a beast with a sheep and couldn't beat it, you should give up the sheep and throw it to the beast. If the beast had the sheep, it wouldn't chase you for the time being, and you would have a chance to escape. At this moment, there were 2 insects chasing them. There were 3 of them. Doya was a member of the Fong tribe like him. Only Onai was a wanderer. In many people's minds, wanderers were the sheep that was abandoned after encountering danger. However, Gua-er remembered that 2 years ago, the man who carved the wood for him said that the promise couldn't be taken back. Gua-er had promised to help take care of Onai. If there was a second wanderer, Gua-er would not hesitate to kick him to the pursuers behind him. However, since he had promised, he couldn't give up this sheep. Their ancestors were watching over the grassland. People of the Fong tribe couldn't break their promise. He was about to awaken his totem power. Yesterday, he told his father that he would become the bravest warrior of the Fong tribe and a famous warrior on the grassland in the future. However, he might not be able to wait until that day. Gua-er clenched the bone knife in his hand and slowed down his running pace. He pulled out the knife and turned around to look at the 2 reddish-brown insects behind and on the side. "You run quickly. I'll hold them off." Before he finished the word, "hold them off," Gua-er's eyes reflected the insect shadow that rushed over quickly. The 2 open chelicerae were like clamps that could clamp people directly. Gua-er could even smell the bloody smell from the insect's mouth and see the wool on the insect's chelicerae. This was the thief who stole his cattle and sheep. "Ah!" Gua-er screamed and waved the knife with his eyes closed. Puff! The sound of flesh being pierced sounded. Before that, Gua-er seemed to have heard the whistling sound like an arrow piercing through the air. Gua-er's hand holding the knife was still trembling, his legs were a little weak, and his throat still uttered odd sounds. However, when he felt that he didn't cut anything, Gua-er stopped roaring and opened his eyes a little bit. The next moment, he was shocked to see that the reddish-brown insect that rushed over was pierced by a spear near its head. The insect was still moving, but 2 more spears flew over in a vertical arrangement and pierced through the insect that stood up because of the pain. The strong impact made the insect fall back. Some very fine scales on the insect's body splashed out along with the brown blood, splashing on the surrounding ground, and some splashing on Gua-er's body. A gust of wind seemed to blow by. Gua-er only caught a glimpse of a gray shadow. Then, the bigger insect that chased from the side was dragged away by force. Yes, dragged away. A wolf taller than the tallest warrior in the tribe dodged the 2 soft sickles, thrown by the insect, bit the insect's body and dragged it out of the soil completely with brute force. After dragging the insect for a distance, the wolf stepped on the insect's body with its claws and tore the whole insect directly. It was like the omnipotent alpha wolves in the stories. The brown liquid spurted out from the insect flowed all over the ground, giving out a smell like rotten leaves. One of the insects that chased them just now was pierced through and made a dying struggle. The other one was violently torn off and couldn't be more dead. There were footsteps and voices behind him. Gua-er looked away from the wolf with difficulty and looked behind him. Onai and Doya didn't run. After he stopped, they also stopped 2 steps away. Further away, a group of people ran over from the low hill. Gua-er only knew one, Xiao, who carved wood for him. Chapter 251. The 3 children's faces still showed the relief after the crisis, as well as the fear that had not completely disappeared. 2 years had passed, but Onai still remembered Xiao. Therefore, after seeing Xiao, Onai was relieved and couldn't help showing joy on his face. His grandfather had said that Xiao was from the same tribe as them. Lang Jie and the others went over to look at the worm that was still struggling. They had never seen this kind of strange worm. Perhaps they only lived on the grassland. "Onai, why are you here?" Xiao came over and asked. If they hadn't arrived in time, the situation would have been terrible if they had been late. Onai briefly told them what had happened. "It should be these worms that stole it. I heard that there was a tribal war on the other side of the mountain. Recently, there have been more and more beasts around here. These worms may have come from the mountain." Onai told them his guess. "Well, it should be them. Where is your grandfather?" Xiao asked again. "Grandfather is waiting for Uncle Kuan and the others. He has been waiting for more than 10 days. Onai said. Xiao had a general idea in his mind. Just at this time, he heard the sound of hoofs. "The people of the Fong tribe are here," Xiao said. Hearing Xiao's words, Doya and Gua-er also looked around. Doya was still vigilant just now. Even if these people had saved them, she was still vigilant against outsiders. Seeing that Onai and Gua-er were familiar with them, her vigilance faded a little, but she still carefully looked at these outsiders whom she had never seen before. These people looked difficult to deal with and would not lose to the warriors of the patrol team in the tribe. Seeing the patrol team appear from the mound, Gua-er and Doya immediately shouted with joy. The team of the Feng tribe was led by Yi Bei, the leader of the patrol team. Xiao Xian had seen him before. Gua-er's father was also among them, and his face was full of sweat. Seeing that the two children were fine, the weight on the hearts of the patrol team was lifted. However, the appearance of these people made them vigilant again. Not to mention, there was an unusual wolf beside him. Those who had hunted wolves before could tell that this wolf was different from the ones they had killed before. Against such a wolf, unless it was the leader, it would be very difficult to win. It was on a completely different level from the wild wolves in the forest. After Gua-er's father arrived on a horse, he checked to make sure that Gua-er was not injured, and then he paid attention to these strangers. Yi Bei had an impression of Xiao Xian, but he couldn't recall his name. Xiao Xian stepped forward and said, "Xiao Xian of the Yanjiao tribe." "Oh right. You came here with the expedition team before." Yi Bei remembered. Hearing the name Xiao Xian, Gua-er's father also knew that this was the carver of the wolf wood carving. He looked at the wolf next to him and compared it with his own wood carving. It was really similar. That was how the wood carving was done back then, right? After briefly introducing Mai and the others, Xiao Xian told them the purpose of their visit. "We came to pick up people and see if we can trade some healthy livestock cubs." Yi Bei looked at the group behind Xiao Xian. All of them had a kind of fierce fighting spirit. Although they were not aggressive, they could not be ignored. If they met such a team at ordinary times, the people of the Feng tribe would immediately sound the alarm. But these people had just saved the children of their tribe, and one of them knew them. Yi Bei noticed that the patrol team kept glancing at the wolf after they came over. He was also shocked. He had never seen such a wolf on the grassland. Maybe some tribes in the grassland had wolves of such size, like the ferocious beasts in the Hui tribe. But after all, there were very few tribes like that on the grassland. They were all famous big tribes, not inferior to those in the central region. But in front of him, they were from the unknown Yanjiao tribe. No matter what he thought, since the other party was not malicious or aggressive, and their words showed that they wanted to make a deal, Yi Bei showed a warm attitude. Letting people take the two dead insects, Yi Bei took Xiao Xian and the others to the tribe. At that time, Xiao Xian was with the traveling team. He was not from the Pu tribe, so naturally, he did not get much attention. But this time, they came in a team representing the tribe, a mysterious tribe that could not be underestimated. Yi Bei could not be careless. He also let people go back to report to the shaman and the chief. Xiao Xian and the others did not go directly to the Feng tribe, but went to the place where Old He and the others were. The wanderers who went out to help find Anai had received the news and rushed back. Old He was also told that Anai was fine. When he was thinking about whether to go back to see his grandson, he saw a group of people coming. Xiao Xian. Old He saw Xiao Xian and his grandson Anai, who was beside Xiao Xian. Hearing the name Xiao Xian, the people who were sitting on the grass immediately stood up and stretched their necks to look over. They heard from Old He that the totem warrior who appeared in the tribe 2 years ago was called Xiao Xian. So the people from the tribe came? Thinking of this, the wanderers were excited. Even those whose legs were injured asked their companions to help them up and looked at the group of people coming over. They had never seen them before, but they felt familiar. They were indeed from the tribe. Yes, are they from the Yanjiao tribe? They are from Marv tribe. Someone corrected. They are really from the tribe. They must be totem warriors. The grassland tribes treated totem warriors differently from wanderers. They could see the cautious attitude of the patrolling members of the Feng tribe, so they must be totem warriors, not wanderers like them. Look, there are wolves. What a big wolf. Is it domesticated? Old He was so excited that he stepped forward to greet them. Grandpa. Anai rushed to the old man and told him what had happened before. Looking at his grandson who was safe and sound, Old He looked at Xiao Xian and the others and thanked them again and again. Long time no see, Old He. Xiao Xian said with a smile. Looking away from Old He, Xiao Xian looked at a young man who was coming over. The person's face was filled with excitement and nervousness. He had a square face, and because he often worked outside, his whole body was tanned. His palms were rough, and there were many wounds and scars on his body. Some were new and some were old. Under the animal skin clothes with several holes, there were traces of grass ropes on his shoulders. Because of the hard life, he was not very strong compared to the other warriors of the Yanjiao tribe, but he had a strong spirit. Probably because he had not had a good rest for many days, he looked a little tired, but he looked at the warriors of the Yanjiao tribe with burning eyes. His name is Kun Tuesday. He was going to take us back. Oldie introduced him. Xiao Xian nodded and stepped back. He pointed to my next to him and introduced him to the wanderers. This is the leader of our team, Senior Totem Warrior, Mai. Xiao Xian deliberately mentioned Senior Totem Warrior to make the wanderers feel more at ease, and also to let Mai know his existence here. If these people awakened their totem power in the future, Mai could take them as his subordinates. For the wanderers, totem warriors were rare, let alone senior totem warriors. Wasn't that the same level as the leader of the patrolling team of the Feng tribe? Mai asked people to distribute some food and herbs to the wanderers, and then he talked with Kun Tu and asked for details. Mai, Xiao Xian, our chief wants to see you. Ibei came and said. Xiao Xian looked at the wanderers. Ibei saw it and smiled. They are coming too. From now on, Kun Tu and the others were no longer wanderers. Since they were no longer wanderers, their attitude was naturally different. It was different to have the support of the tribe. The wanderers were so excited that they could not calm down for a long time. After finding a place to settle the injured and tired wanderers, Mai took people to the chief of the Feng tribe. The chief of the Feng tribe mainly wanted to meet the people of the Yanjiao tribe and see what kind of people they were. At the same time, he also wanted to thank them for the strange insects. Hearing that they were going to trade livestock, the chief of the Feng tribe asked people to take Xiao Xian and the others to pick livestock. Mai stayed there to talk with the people of the Feng tribe, and Xiao Xian took 10 people to pick livestock. The livestock were not always in the same place. Sometimes they would go to one place, and if they did not have enough, they would go to another place. When Gua Er saw Xiao Xian take people and wolves to his home, he was very excited. Dad, a living wolf, a living one. I know. Don't go there, or it will eat you. Gua Er's father went over to help Xiao Xian pick the livestock, but Gua Er didn't dare to approach, so he could only stand not far away and watch. He had already forgotten the panic of encountering the strange insects before, and now he had time to stare at Caesar. Not only Gua Er, but also many people around, no matter adults or children, especially those who were close to Gua Er. They had also seen Gua Er's wood carving. Gua Er had taken it out and compared it with them. They had thought that the wood carving was too exaggerated. Some of them had seen a wolf pack and the head of a wolf pack, but they had never seen such a wolf. Look at the claws and teeth of the wood carving, and the momentum, it was too exaggerated. However, now it seemed that the wood carving was not fully shown. Sure enough, it felt different to see a living one. Being stared at, they felt a chill on their backs. Xiao Xian asked people to help him pick some livestock, and he also picked some himself. There were cattle, sheep, and horses. They were all young animals that could walk and run. Because the chief valued the Yanjiao tribe, the people who helped him pick the livestock did not dare to fool around. They picked carefully. After picking, they traded with water moonstones or shells. Before Xiao Xian came, he had already exchanged water moonstones for shells and other things in a market. So no matter what the Feng tribe accepted, Xiao Xian could take them out. In the end, there were 20 cattle, sheep, and horses, male and female. After picking, he asked the wanderers to look after them. They had experience and could take good care of them. That night, the people of the Yanjiao tribe stayed in the Feng tribe. Because of the war on the other side of the mountain, more beasts came over the mountain. On this side of the mountain, in addition to the Feng tribe, there were several other tribes that had been attacked by strange insects and beasts. Naturally, there were more people patrolling at night. Caesar lay on the grass outside, listening to the cries in the distance. He felt that it was too noisy, so he stood up and shook his fur. Then he raised his head and howled to the sky. Ow! The howl passed through the grassland of the Feng tribe and spread to farther places. It could even be heard in the mountains. The cattle and sheep of the Feng tribe were shivering in the pen. Many horses in the pen were also anxious, but not too much. They did not feel the murderous intent against them. Some of them had faced the wolves before, so they were not timid. Some beasts wandering around the border of the Feng tribe did not hesitate to turn around and run away after hearing the howl, especially the wolves. Invisible underground, several insects that were heading towards the Feng tribe also paused, probably thinking about something. After a while, they also turned around and ran towards other tribes. After the howl, there was silence. Caesar did not hear any provocative howls. Satisfied, he lay down again and continued to sleep. The warriors of the Feng tribe patrolling on the grassland looked at the beasts in the distance and looked at each other. Chapter 252. It could be said that the night they stayed at the Flaming Horns tribe was the quietest night the people of the Feng tribe had ever spent. On this night, they didn't hear the cries of various nocturnal beasts from afar, nor did they hear the whistles of the patrols to inform each other of the emergency situation. They also didn't encounter any other abnormal things. Even the strange insects that they had been guarding against all this time didn't appear. The next day, Yangguang was bright and beautiful. Every family got up early, and the first thing they did was to count the livestock in their animal pens. "How is it? Not a single one is missing," a woman of the Feng tribe said happily to her husband after counting the livestock. The neighbors were also exchanging information to see who was unlucky enough to lose their livestock. However, after exchanging information for a whole morning, they found that no one had lost their livestock. A man who complained that he had lost his sheep had to count twice to make sure that they were all there because he had counted wrongly. This was the first time in a long time that no livestock had been lost. Listening to the information collected by his subordinates, Bei nodded. It seems that those insects were the ones who stole the livestock. It could be something else, but they were scared away last night. Someone whispered. The howling of the wolves last night was heard by everyone, whether they were sleeping at home or patrolling on the grassland. The patrols even saw with their own eyes that the beasts heard the howling and ran away. For a moment, the people of the Feng tribe envied the Yanjiao tribe in their hearts. How good it was to have such a wolf guarding them. Other livestock thieves didn't dare to come close. The people of the Yanjiao tribe stayed in the Feng tribe for 2 days before leaving, mainly to take care of the wanderers. After 2 days of treatment, the seriously injured were finally out of danger. Xiao Xian also took the opportunity to take some warriors to the mountains to chop some wood. When they came back, they made a simple carriage. Because there were limited materials and most of the tribe's skilled workers were not here, Xiao Xian basically finished it alone. The carriage he made was not as big as the one they had when they first returned to the old haunt. There was no roof, only a simple frame, and a straw mat woven by a wanderer to shelter Yangguang. Because the wood was not very good and not very strong, it was okay to make do with it. As for pulling the carriage, this time he did not let Caesar pull it. Xiao Xian picked 2 adult horses to pull the carriage. Let the wounded who can't move get into the carriages. The wanderers were in a good mood. After 2 days of rest, they were in a much better state of mind. In addition, they had the totem warriors of the Yanjiao tribe with them this time. They felt relaxed and happy. When Anai's family left, Guaer gave him a pony. Although Doya and other children of the same age who knew him didn't play together, they all went to see him off. When we meet again in the future, we will all be totem warriors, right? Guaer looked at the people leaving and said, "Hey, where did Anai say their tribe was? If we go out in the future, we'll go and see him," said one of the children. Although he said that, his eyes were fixed on Caesar. Speaking of this, Guaer was very entangled. My father said that they are in the ferocious beast mountain forest. The other children. Even if they were far away, they also knew where the ferocious beast mountain forest was. After saying goodbye to the patrol of the Feng tribe, the Yanjiao people left with the wanderers and did not continue to go deep into the grassland. Although they were also very curious and wanted to see what other tribes on the grassland looked like, the task was more important. This time they mainly came to pick up the wanderers, not to wander around. When there was a chance in the future, they would go out for a long journey. After leaving the Feng tribe, they were almost out of the grassland. Xiao Xian still didn't see Cha-Cha's figure. Looking at the sky, Xiao Xian was puzzled. Why didn't Cha-Cha come back? When they came to the Feng tribe 2 days ago, Cha-Cha ran out to play alone and didn't follow them into the Feng tribe. Xiao Xian didn't care about it. He only told it not to go to other tribes to pick up livestock, or it would be shot by bows and arrows. At first, Xiao Xian didn't worry about it, but he didn't see it for 2 days. In the past, when Cha-Cha left him to play, it would come back every day to report. Now it disappeared directly. Everyone was planning to leave, but it didn't appear. Could it be that it ran to the other side of the mountain to watch the tribal war and forgot to come back? Fortunately, before leaving the grassland, Cha-Cha finally came back. Compared with when it came, Cha-Cha looked quite embarrassed. There were many wounds, and a lot of hair on its body had fallen off. Fortunately, it could fly back, and its life was not in danger. Xiao Xian looked carefully. On Cha-Cha's body, some were scratched by sharp claws, some were pecked, and some were pulled out. However, although it was injured, it seemed to be very excited. Who did it fight with? Lang Jie asked. It should be. It's probably a bird about the same size as it, or maybe it's the same species. Xiao Xian took a feather from Cha-Cha's bloody claws. This was Cha-Cha's trophy. When it flew back, it was still holding it in its claws. As for the blood on its claws, it was obvious that it wasn't its own. Cha-Cha had several feathers in its claws. Looking at the size and color of the feathers, they were almost exactly the same as the ones on Cha-Cha's body. If it wasn't for his understanding of Cha-Cha, Xiao Xian might have even mistakenly thought that the feathers were plucked from Cha-Cha's body. Look at this jubilant mood. Did you win? Lang Jie clicked his tongue. Ka! Cha-Cha responded, flapping its wings proudly. Unlike Caesar's closeness to the Yanjiao tribesmen, Cha-Cha had always been more distant to other people. Not to mention that there were many strangers in the team this time. After Xiao Xian applied medicine to it, it flew back to the sky and followed the team. This time, it didn't run around randomly. Xiao Xian helped to collect the feathers as trophies. When they returned, he would let Old Ke keep them. Every time Cha-Cha brought back trophies, Old Ke would always keep some for it. The wanderers were very curious about the two ferocious beasts in the team. However, Caesar and the others didn't dare to approach, and Cha-Cha in the sky was too far away, so they could only glance at them. They didn't expect that there would be ferocious beasts in the Yanjiao tribe. A tribe with ferocious beasts should be considered strong, right? After leaving the grassland, the team didn't go back directly, but went to another place. There, Kuan Tu and other team leaders, who were responsible for gathering people on the grassland, agreed that they would meet there after leaving the grassland. The grassland was very large, and there was more than one way out. It might be the shortest way for Kuan Tu and the others, but it might not be the same for other people on the grassland. Therefore, they split up. There's a market there, and many travelers will pass by there. However, the place we agreed on is not at the market, but on a mountain. It's just close to the market. We'll use the whistle to contact each other. Kuan Tu told me about their arrangement. In order to return to the old haunt and the tribe, they had paid a lot. The wanderers had always been a weak group. Even if they contacted each other, some people would die because of it. After 2 days of getting along, I had a preliminary understanding of Kuan Tu's day. He was a witty and calm person. No wonder Old He and the others came to him for help. If he wasn't there, the wanderers in this direction on the grassland might not be able to come here safely. Although there were many untrustworthy people among the wanderers, most of them were loyal. Otherwise, they wouldn't have taken such a big risk. Even when they heard that the tribe was in the ferocious beasts' mountain forest, they didn't retreat. After leaving the grassland, it took them another day to reach the market Kuan Tu talked about. Because there were wanderers and livestock in the team, their speed was much slower. If they were only totem warriors, it would take them less than half a day to get there, but it was different with wanderers. The market was also a favorite place for many travelers who passed by the grassland. Some travelers of the grassland tribes would rest there before entering or leaving the grassland. Kuan Tu was not sure where the other wanderers were. He had never left the grassland, and all he knew was the information he exchanged with food and other people. Then, he discussed with the other team leaders and finalized the information. When he arrived here, he was still in the dark. Even if he looked at the map, it was difficult to pinpoint the exact location, not to mention that they didn't have a map at that time. Kuan Tu blew the wooden whistle according to the rhythm as agreed, but there was no response. Haven't they come yet? Someone said. No, we are late for a few days because of the tribal war. But the others, some of them are closer than us. Did they also encounter the tribal war? Even if they did, not every team would encounter it. The grassland doesn't fight every day. Someone retorted. It was reasonable to say that even if the other teams didn't all arrive, there should be at least 1 or 2 teams. However, no matter how Kuan Tu blew the whistle, there was still no response. On the contrary, some travelers passing by always looked at such a strange team with curious eyes. If it weren't for the fierce warriors of the Yanjiao tribe and Caesar, which made the travelers afraid, there might have been several battles. Kuan Tu was anxious when there was no response. Mai also frowned. Xiao Xian looked at the sky. Cha-Cha didn't give any hint. indicating that there were no active wanderers around. There are no groups of wanderers around here. Let's find a place to settle them down first, and then we'll continue to search. Xiao Xian said to Mai. It was not good to run around with so many wanderers and livestock. After searching the surrounding mountains and settling the wanderers and livestock, Xiao Xian, Mai, and more than 20 warriors left with Kuan Tu to continue the search. The remaining half of the warriors and Caesar stayed to protect the wanderers. They looked around with Kuan Tu and even scattered to search, but still didn't see any groups of wanderers. Kuan Tu's whistle was different from the one used by Xiao Xian. Mai was worried that even if others heard their whistle, as long as it was not the same as Kuan Tu's whistle, they would not respond. He could only take Kuan Tu wherever he went. After searching the mountains near the market, they didn't find anyone. Xiao Xian proposed to go to the market to inquire. After all, there were so many wanderers coming and going. It was okay to hide their whereabouts, but if they were seen, they should be able to get some information. Mai agreed. Anyway, there was no better way now, so he followed Xiao Xian's suggestion. You're tuning in to the Blimay's Sword of Destiny YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.